Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We are going to have a great show. As Katie Paige is here, we're going to find out what's with Snippy the horse and many other anomalous things that she is investigating. It's going to be a great show, and her hair looks perfect tonight. It really does as we get ready for her. But first, we have to say hello to each and every one of you. So let us say hello to Kitty Catty Whack in the gold medal position, Eternity Eternal with a silver, Tim Mothman and his goatee with a bronze medal tonight. Hi there, Luscious Jewels. How are you? Bar Madison and Necessary Dialogue. How are you guys doing? Necessary Dialogue, thank you for kicking off this super chat tonight. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis, so thank you very, very much. Lenda, how are you? Stephanie Kenny Blankenship, nice to see you. The Ferret is here. The Ferret will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio if you don't mind. To the left of the studio. Mel WD-40 is here lubing us up for tonight's show because you always want to go into a show nice and smooth. You don't want any rigidness, so the lube really helps. So thank you, Mel, for keeping us lubed up. Mama Catherine, mwah, I love you, my dear. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful evening, and I know you're going to love Katie tonight. She is absolutely amazing. Scrolling on down, we have next... Oh, there's Eternity Eternal and Linda. Jaquetta, how are you tonight? Good to have you here. Gory Tiger, thank you for coming on in. T-Bone, my man, how's it going? I'm going to wear the other shirt tomorrow night, T-Bone. I promise you. I will. God, I love those shirts. T-Bone sent me a couple of alien shirts. They're absolutely stunning. Fantastic. Skip to Malou, how are you? Road Flare, nice to see you. Little Timmy James. What's happening, my friend? Operation Shutdown. Thanks for coming on in. Fast Hemi, what's happening, buddy? So we continue on with our roll call here. Lil Cam on YouTube did 500 sit-ups in 7 minutes to warm up for Katie tonight. He wanted his abs to look good for her. That's absolutely true. 100% true. John Jackson, how's it going? Digger Dog. Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. Walter Kochabinski, thanks for coming on in as we continue on with our roll call. Rose Demaray is here. Rose will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Captain K-Rod, Ozzy, and number 27 in your program, starting at right wing from Stockholm, Sweden, Lars Jansson. There he is. Phyllis Boucher Perry, how are you? Good to see you back. As we continue on with roll call, there's Frankie B. If you wave at Frankie, he always waves back. Jay Trueseeker, thanks for coming on in. I'm Hardcore, over on X. Good to see you. Smokes a lot. Thanks for coming on in. Hi there, Hippie Deidre and your Birkenstocks. Good to see you. JSCO in the studio. Thank you for attending tonight. Kurt M., thank you for joining us. And Robert Lamoth, yes. Night Drive, how you doing? Welcome back. Who else is here? JMJ12, good to see you. Algaray over on Twitch, 1,400 jumping jacks in 4 minutes. He's tired, but ready for Katie tonight. Absolutely. We all are. Rock and Rory, how's it going? All right, let's get the radio side going. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for tuning us in as we have Katie Paige coming on in to talk about Snippy the horse. It's going to be a great show. We're going to get into a lot of UFO and high strangeness tonight with her. Now, we are in roll call. And what can I tell you here? Who's joined us? Let's take a look. Well, I think we're still caught up. I do believe we are still caught up. There we go. Super Chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. B. Arthur, how you doing there? Beautiful. You're golden tonight. As well as Hillbilly Herb, how are you? And Seven Systems, thanks for coming on in. Here we go.
Are you ready to hear your mystic voice of the night?
It's time to wake up.
He's here. Shush. Be quiet. He's ready for you to listen. Let's point our ears towards the little cabin in the woods, where together, my friends, we own the night. It's time for Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott.
From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Read the news wire. Check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We have an amazing show for you tonight. UFOs, paranormal, supernatural events. Katie Paige is going to join us from the Rocky Mountains here momentarily. Then in hour number 3, we're going to have Swamp Dweller. Then the Cryptid Q&A. Robin Haynes will be here for the final part of the show. So let's get right to it. One of my favorite people in this field is rocking with us tonight. Katie Paige has personal ties to a plethora of high strangeness at a ranch in Colorado. In UFO folklore, it was known as Clearview Ranch and predates the infamous Skinwalker Ranch by over a decade. This is what motivated her interest in ufology, to find answers to her experiences. Katie was Colorado's former MUFON state director. She was a star team investigator for MUFON and was the team lead administrator for MUFON's Mars team. Now she's working on her own. She has television shows galore that are knocking on her door. Why? Because she is majorly talented, majorly smart, and dogged for the investigation of the unknown. Katie Paige, thank you so much for coming back on Spaced Out Radio, my friend. How are you?
I am feeling pretty chill on this Tuesday night. We're close to a full moon. Got the windows open, and I don't know. I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on, Dave. It's always great to be here.
I still have an hour and a half of sunshine left before it gets dark. Yes. So that's all right. I always love it when you're on this show because not only are you a good friend of mine personally, but you are somebody who is so valued in this field of study because you're just amazing at what you do. You a lot of investigators, let me put it this way, a lot of investigators are not only dogged, but they can be rude about it. That they press for the knowledge, whereas you try so hard to be very valuable to the research and explain that to people. Why did you develop, or how did you develop that strategy in order to gain information?
I think it's just a matter of, it's kind it's kind of selfish in a way now that I think about it, but I just sort of like stay in my lane, keep my head down, and I'm selfishly really just trying to figure out what the heck was going on out there on that ranch property all those decades ago. Not only for me, but I lost my mom last July, so it's been a year now. She motivated me a little bit because she was interested in all of this as well. But my sister too, who joined me for season 3 of Beyond Skinwalker, and we could talk a little bit about that episode if you want to. But both me and my sister, we did not live there full time. But I think that helped because the 3 boys that did live there full time, they all moved out of the state of Colorado, and they don't want anything to do with any of this high strangeness stuff because that's how terrified they were from everything that happened out there. So I think I was just enough removed to kind of start searching for answers to all these questions. And as you know, Dave, we start asking questions and the hole gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And I just kind of stay out of now. Maybe it's a little bit of my age too, but I'm not on UFO Twitter. I don't get involved in any of that kind of stuff, and that sort of helped keep me focused.
We see a great divide in ufology versus UAPology, and that could take up a whole show right there. We're not going to get into that, but so many people who were here prior to 2017, yourself, myself included, when the UAP scenario kind of blew up with To the Stars, we've really not engaged in that new field of ufology that has taken over social media platforms. How has that benefited you as a researcher by just putting your head down, doing your own thing, and not worrying about the dramatics of every government story or every tweet that's put out there?
Right. It hasn't benefited me at all in all reality, because I feel like, half the time you're on the sidelines, minding your own business, and you kind of get overlooked. Maybe, I don't know, my voice isn't as heard as others. I think what hurts me a little bit too is I tend to have more of a skeptical mind. I think that surprises a lot of people. I'm not one who kind of just believes everything at face value. The trust me bro kind of things. Not that I'm not open to hearing everybody's things. I've experienced a lot of high strangeness, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, that's, I loved opening up the Snippy case because I do like the archives and the documents and the FOIAs and some paper trails that we try to get a hold of. But the good stuff's really buried, and I don't think we'll ever see the light of day. I don't think we'll get the answers that a lot of us want. At least not in the next 10, 15 years.
For you, as you put your head down, the one thing that I like about it is you're focusing on numerous different stories. I know you are very passionate about Roswell. I know you are very passionate about the ranch that you grew up on. I know you're very passionate about finding these stories like Snippy the horse and others that just show that high strangeness can go in all sorts of different directions. What attracts your mind to those type of stories?
Well, what's interesting is, and you and I and probably most of the listeners that are tuning in tonight know that there's more to this flipping reality than it's like mind-blowing, the synchronicities, the coincidence that are beyond chance, that kind of thing. And a few years back, a guy named Kerry King, who is the great nephew of Nellie King, who owns Snippy the horse. So Snippy, for those of you who don't know, was really the first, before things went viral, Snippy was really the first animal mutilation that went viral around the world through the newspapers. I mean, this was like the second biggest story for 1967, and it happened out here in the San Luis Valley of Colorado. So number one, it's a Colorado case. Number two, APRO, which investigated the Rocky Mountain Ranch in my childhood, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, also investigated the Snippy case. Now, I, like so many other people out there, just thought it was about this poor sad dead horse named Snippy. And Kerry King is now having events out there in the San Luis Valley, which is dark sky territory. And he invited me out for their first initial run. It was basically a closed event with just the family and that. And I got to meet Grandpa Bob, who has since passed, and a lot of the King family. So for them, the King family, this story of Aunt Nellie's horse, you know, it's legendary, and it's affected their family on down through the generations. And so I got to meet them and the family, and then went the following year. And then the question of the horse's name came up, because in the late 80s, Linda Moulton Howe and Christopher O'Brien, who we since lost as well, they interviewed Burl Lewis, who was Nellie's husband, and he switched the names for reasons unbeknownst to us, and we don't understand why he did. But all of a sudden, Snippy became Lady. So this became a big mystery. And this was before David Marler acquired the original APRA files. And as fate would have it, or coincidence or synchronicity, however you want to look at it, David Marler in the National UFO Historical Record Center out there in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, got access to the APRA files. And so, you know, for me, it's a 5-hour drive from where I'm at to go down there. So I drive down to the archives thinking I'll find more things on the ranch, because there's stuff from the Rocky Mountain Ranch that I would love to find, like the original photos of the big, large snowless circle, you know, that is now the landing site on Beyond Skinwalker. So I went down there to dig up stuff on the ranch, and Dave drops all the Snippy stuff on the table, and there's audio recordings and photographs, just, I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of never seen photographs for over 37 years or something. The APRA files were lost. And then next thing you know, I'm texting with Kerry King going, "You're not going to believe the stuff that we have found." And it just opened this whole Pandora's box, reopening the Snippy investigation. And what's crazy is I had no idea the parallels to the Rocky Mountain Ranch to what was going on in the San Luis Valley in 1966, which predates Snippy into 67 and onward to this day. The San Luis Valley is a super active, high strange location in the state. And I think it's been grossly overlooked for a lot of years. So I'm happy to reopen this case and share with everybody all the unbelievable parallels to the Rocky Mountain Ranch and the Skinwalker Ranch and all these other locations. It's mind-blowing.
Well, I mean, the big thing that I have noticed is there are these spots all over the United States, Canada, and around the world where just high strangeness seems to concentrate. Have you, in your studies, ever figured out what causes it? Because I know you've done work at Skinwalker Ranch. I know you've been down to the Meadow with Trey Hudson. Mm-hmm. I know you've investigated this ranch, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Bradshaw Ranch as well. What do you think causes these locations to just take off with the phenomena?
I think it's a combination of several different types of things. First and foremost, like I know there's some outliers to this, but most of them ping the charts as being highly magnetic areas, certain geological, you know, especially out there in the San Luis Valley, we have the great sand dunes like filled with just crystal and sand and things like that. So, but highly magnetic, a lot of them have the aquifers, what Dave Pilates talks about, with the Carl Higdon case and others. And actually right at the Rocky Mountain Ranch, from my childhood, we have two major aquifers that come together. So the water tables, you know, are varied, but I think it opens up, you know, tunnels and perhaps caves and, you know, caverns underground. So we have certain magnetism, water, geological, and I think it's this like magical formula. Then you throw on top of that all the legends, the Native American legends and trauma that is probably recorded. Even like the paranormal realm, you go out to, you know, the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, and they'll talk about that too in paranormal locations or paranormal hotspots where you have the water elements and the geological, the crystals and things like that seem to retain or record these traumatic events in these areas. And I think it all plays a role in these highly strange kind of locations. But a lot of them also are very close to military bases and missile silos and a military presence. So then that question for me became, we know at the Rocky Mountain Ranch, for example, we had soldiers on property. We had John Duke, who was out there, came from San Francisco, perhaps MK Ultra kind of stuff going on. So there was some black access projects, and that's where my skepticism comes in on what's going on now and what the narrative is. And it's kind of like they're rolling out this program that we're all supposed to just sort of believe at face value. And, you know, and I'm a little skeptical on what's really happening with all that.
Do you think then that there is some sort of tie in between all of these locations? Do you think like maybe there's portal hopping, maybe there is, you know, some sort of answer that we just can't see with our own eyes?
I think whatever it is, whether it's tunneling or things underground, which I believe that's a very real possibility. You talk about the Dulce base and even into the San Luis Valley, so many strange things around Mount Blanca, which is right there in the San Luis Valley. I mean, even for decades before the Snippy event, they were seeing a lot like Mount Shasta, lights and craft going in and out of Mount Blanca. And so in that whole area of Crestone in the San Luis Valley, this is Oppenheimer had a summer home there. Tesla did a lot of work out there. It's like an interesting place for the CIA, you know, and the feds are all out there. So then you wonder, why are they out there? What do they know that we don't know? And what are they covering up, you know?
When you look at all of these locations, you look at your work that you've done, how do you find answers? Like, what's an answer to you? Is it just by going by clues that you find little pieces of information that may have been written down, say 40, 50, 60 years ago? How do you find answers?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Dave. And it's so interesting how that works, because for years and years and years, as soon as John Schuessler learned of my childhood at the Rocky Mountain Ranch, he quickly gave me the original briefing document. And it's thick. It's right here in the drawer. And it seems to me like I'll retain little pieces of information, or let's say a clue, if you want to call it a clue, and I'll follow that lead for a while, totally skimming over other important data. And it's almost as if like I'm meant to get pieces of information when I'm meant to get it. And even in Dr. Leo Sprinkle's, you know, I spent 3 years going through all his archives and over 70 boxes at the archives in Laramie. And he talked about that years and years ago, that it's like contactees and experiencers are kind of given these breadcrumbs, and they're given information when they're meant to get it. And that's what's happened on my journey as well. I mean, just like so many of us too, there's been times where I just get like frustrated or overwhelmed, or maybe I feel like I've gotten all the answers I've needed, or I'm not going to get any further. And right when that happens, boom, something else will connect the dots for me. And that just recently happened. I don't want to go into it too deeply, but these are tapes I had from when I was on the ranch when I was, 11 and 12 years old. I was put into this program. It was a biofeedback training program in the Denver Tech Center. And this guy, Thomas H. Badinsky, started the biofeedback. It's called the Twilight Learning Program, which later became the Gateway Tapes. And they started to work with the Monroe Institute back east. And it's kind of like these connecting the dots with Thomas H. Badinsky and this program I was on at the Denver Tech Center. He initially started at Area 51. It gets really strange and really deep. So this is like one of those new things that I'm following the clues on. I'm doing a deep dive on this Thomas H. Badinsky, who worked on the SR, is it the 71 Blackbird from Area 51 that our friend Jim Goodall knows so much about? Yes. So I wonder, and you should ask Goodall for me if he knows of Thomas H. Badinsky, because he worked out there at Area 51. And then magically, he's this engineer who is working on propulsion systems and navigation systems as an engineer there. And then all of a sudden, he comes to the Tech Center in Colorado and is working with the brand new, neurosciences and biofeedback. And he hooked me up to, lowering and raising my body temperatures and things like that. And I'm like, wait a second, that's not a coincidence. There's something to that. So this is another avenue I'm going down. Like, why were there soldiers from Fort Carson on the ranch? why is the Air Force and NORAD involved in what's going on there, and informing the sheriffs what they can and can't talk about. This is where Linda Moulton Howe got her start, and she knows darn well, and she'll talk about it now, that she was actually, given narratives that you are not to talk about A, B, or C, but you can talk about this. Same with the sheriffs out there. So even back in the 70s, this stuff was being dictated and steered in a certain way. And I just think, I guess that's my big message too with the Snippy case, even though it was, 58 years ago, it's not too late to learn new things about these historic cases and piece together clues even decades later, because we know so much more now than we did back then.
4 minutes to go before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Katie Paige is here from the Rocky Mountain Research, and we're going to get into Snippy the horse here in the next half hour, because I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. I even brought visuals. So,
Katie, when you go on an adventure like this, trying to, follow the path the way you do, how much fun is it? For people who may not know why we do this, how much fun is it just going down the rabbit hole?
It's fun when you get those aha moments. I mean, like I shared a stage at Contact in the Desert with Earl Grey Anderson, a dear friend that we all lost. This community lost a awesome, amazing guy in Earl Grey Anderson. And to have the synchronicity up on stage with him when he talked about, his mom that worked for Howard Hughes goes down this elevator in the middle of the desert. And I had just had a conversation with Jeff McBurney, who, Bob Bigelow owns Skinwalker Ranch and the Mount Wilson Ranch at the same time. And I'm, learning about the Howard Hughes connection to Mount Wilson and this shaft and elevator and the stuff they're pulling out from underground at Mount Wilson. And then here's Earl Grey talking about his mom going down this elevator to, he didn't know where it was. And I'm like, ooh, pick me. I think I know. And those are the things that is just like, oh my gosh, it keeps you going, because what are the chances of that happening? And I'm so glad that I got to work with Earl, and we kind of got to at least discover some of the clues with Mount Wilson and his mom and Howard Hughes and all these things. And those synchronicities just never seem to end. Like in doing a deep dive on Howard Hughes, I had no idea he was into ufology and UFOs. And he was even at the Integratron in California and all this stuff. Like the more you learn about Howard Hughes, the more mysterious that whole thing gets. And that's what's fun about it, tying all these things together, even like the Carl Higdon case with the boxes and the elk and all that stuff. When you start making these connections and talking to Paul Sinclair in the UK, and then having him tell me that they're out there in the middle of nowhere and they have this disembodied electrical voice, just like what I heard as a little girl on the ranch. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. It's moments like that just is like, whoa, that's a lot of fun. And to share it with other people. Like, I'm not one of those people that I can't keep my mouth shut. If I learn something, I'm like, here it is. So that's what's fun to me, is making the connections.
The people that you meet, the skeptics, the researchers, the experiencers along the line, what's better, the research or meeting the people who've had the knowledge or the experience to go along with it?
I think it's all important. In fact, after Contact in the Desert this year, I was asked to do a panel podcast for Groovy Gavin. It's a podcast I've never watched. I still haven't watched it. But it was interesting because we had Nick Pope, and we had Ryan Wood, and then we had a skeptic, kind of like the Phil Klassa today. He wrote the book UFOs No, or something like that. He was a skeptic on the panel. And of course, they sent me right next to him. And, I thanked him for what he did. I thanked him for having that voice of the skeptic, because I think it's all important, and I had a great conversation with him, and getting to know him, I was like kind of taken back that his partner that he was with was open to everything. She just gobbled everything up and believes in ghosts and UFOs and all of it. And then, here's the skeptical side of things. But I think that all sides are important. Yeah.
Katie, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because when we return from the break here on Spaced Out Radio, Katie Paige is going to get into a strange case. She's going to teach us about who or what Snippy the horse is. How does this tie to high strangeness? Katie Paige will break it down for us from Rocky Mountain Ranch Research right after this. Stay tuned, everybody. All right, we're clear.
I'm jumping all over the place. I have like so much to share. I feel like I haven't been vocal in a while.
Well, you can come on anytime. You know you have the green card.
Ooh, that's cool.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean it when I say that.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to mute myself for a second.
Sure. By the way, for anybody scoring at home who's been following our Flight 21 research, today is the 60th anniversary of the plane crash.
Man.
Hi, Delilah. How are you? Yeah, 60 years ago. I didn't know whether or not I should have gone out there today. I didn't have time during the day, but I was thinking, wondering if I should, but I figured I'd just leave that energy alone for the day. Cool Arrow, how are you?
It sounds to me, though, like if you're hearing somebody saying, help me, or maybe there's some spirits there that they don't want the story to rest, and maybe there's some things that are still yet to be learned about this crash.
Yeah, we try and stay away from that because technically it is still an open investigation by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Right.
So when we go in there, we try not to talk about the crash itself. Hi, Destiny Rocks. How are you? But everything else around it, like those voices that we heard, they were definitely trying to lure us in.
That's kind of creepy.
It was all monotone. Like there was no emotion in them. It was like, help me. I'm over here. Help me.
Yeah.
Can you come here?
It's like a trickster.
Yeah. And I wasn't having any of that. I said to Tim on camera, I said, this is how people go missing in Missing 411 by David Paulides.
Yep.
This is how it starts right here.
Agreed. Do you guys bring like a compass with you if that thing starts spinning, or you're getting weird readings? Hightail it out of there.
No. The phenomena asked when I was haunted by this subject since November, this location since November. The phenomena told me that the first 6 times it doesn't want us doing anything except sitting around. I mean, we've gone on a few walks down trails to show people everything, and that's all documented on our YouTube channel. But we're literally really haven't started. We've slowly started to progress in that, but for right now, we got one more time out there before we start thinking of things to try and draw the phenomena out.
When you say the phenomenon tells you to wait, is that like a download you're getting, or like a internal message?
Yeah. So when the phenomena was haunting me, I went into a meditative state and I said, what do you want? Why do you keep haunting me with this? And it was just like, wouldn't answer. I said, until I finally agreed. I said, okay, I'll go out there. What do you want? And then the message was, we want you to go out there. I automatically knew it was going to be like a 2 to 3 year minimum investigation.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the first 6 times that we were going to go out there, we were just to sit back and watch. And we've had some strange things happen already. The other thing was so watch, running out of time. I said, this will be filmed and I will never come in alone. The Phenomena said, okay. I asked if we were safe. The Phenomena still has not answered that question. So it's a rush.
Yeah.
But I'm not falling for things trying to pull me into the forest. That's for sure.
Right. I totally hear and understand what you're saying, because it's hard to explain to somebody who doesn't get kind of those downloaded messages, but you learn. I mean, it takes practice, just like exercising a muscle.
Oh, yeah.
You learn to distinguish your own voice from something else. And for years, I was really careful not to talk about that. But
hold that thought. Necessary Dialogue, thank you for the lone super chat tonight. We're going to get going with the second half hour right now. Here comes the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Katie Paige from Rocky Mountain Research in Colorado is with us, and we always appreciate when she makes time for us to come on this show. Hey, I want to remind all of you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, do you know our archives are always free? Yeah, on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. From Rocky Mountain Ranch Research, we have Katie Paige here from the beautiful state of Colorado. And Katie, thank you so much for coming here. I got to tell you something before the show. I don't normally mention personal things on the show. I don't. I try and keep it just to the show. But you know what bugs me? I got a pet peeve. I got to get this. It's an itch I got to scratch. I got to get it off my chest.
Oh, no.
So my neighbor 2 doors down that I've lived next door to, for the last decade. Well, about a year ago, they decided to get 3 corgis. And the one corgi is a barkaholic. There is not a time from the morning until nighttime when they bring those dogs in that dog doesn't stop barking.
Crazy.
Look, I love dogs. I have a dog. I love dogs. Dogs are just one of the most incredible animals out there. But at some point as an owner, you have to tell your dog to shut the hell up. And this dog just barks. If there's a crosswind, it's 30 minutes of barking. If there's a siren going down the highway, that's a 42-minute barkaholic session. It's ridiculous. Why can't people shut their dogs up?
I have a confession to make. I had a similar situation years ago at my old house. And there was a dog just like that lived right next door. And all through the night, yap, 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 yap. You know what I did? I'm guilty. I would go to my freezer and I'd get a frozen piece of meat that was kind of like, I probably won't thaw this and eat it. And I would throw it over the fence and they would chew on this frozen piece of meat. It worked. It kept them quiet. And then it came to a point where I had to leave notes on the door and, please, can you think about getting a bark collar, or can you please? I mean, there has to be a way to solve this problem, because you're right. I mean, it's just being a responsible pet owner and courteous to your neighbors.
I couldn't imagine being the dude whose house is behind them. I couldn't imagine that.
Just write a nice note.
Yeah, it's brutal. I don't understand. And why do you need 3 dogs? 3 corgis. I mean, I will say this. Corgis are so cute.
Yeah.
I love corgis. Okay, they are so cute with their little legs that, where they kind of prance instead of walk. Oh, they're just adorable. But this one, it's one out of the 3. 1 out of the 3. The other 2 are silent. But this one, Oh my goodness, it needs a
feel
bark
you.
collar.
Yeah, I feel you.
Speaking of animals, let's talk about Snippy the horse. I
Yeah.
need to learn about Snippy. Tell me the history here.
So, like I said earlier, 1967, it was really the first viral animal mutilation. Snippy was found in very unusual circumstances with basically all the flesh and skin removed from the shoulder tips up, so the head was just bare. I think before we get to all of that, first of all, I remember the name of the skeptic is Robert Schaefer. Have you heard of Robert Schaefer?
Yes.
Yes, so he was with me on that panel, so that's his name. But it's also interesting that Nellie Lewis, who owns Snippy the horse, worked for Howard Hughes as well. So that Howard Hughes keeps poking in. But one of the first questions we had, and one of the first documents that really got me excited at the archives, was this particular document right here. It's several pages. I won't read you the whole thing. But basically, one of the really compelling things, there were 4 horses that were pastured on the King Ranch. There was Smokey, a black. And what was interesting about Smokey is Smokey died the week before Snippy of what they thought at the time was a snake bite on his hip. Smokey was 14 hands high and 1,200 pounds, and a rattlesnake bite on a horse that large on the hip will not kill a horse that big. So Smokey's death remained a mystery, and that happened the week before. What I also learned, which was interesting, the neighbors to the Kings was Ernest Wellington and the Wellington Ranch, and that horse or that ranch had so many animal deaths, cow deaths and mutilations, that it was known as the Dead Cow Ranch. So we had animal mutilations going on, throughout the valley. But Snippy really was the first recognized one. The telltale signs that we have for animal mutilations now were, bloodless, organs removed, brain cavity was dry. There was even powder found. But what was fascinating about going and finding all this information about this case and seeing these photographs is there was way more to the case and other sightings around the valley before and after Snippy that just mirrored the Rocky Mountain Ranch, from the strange hum sounds, which was one of the first things reported at the Rocky Mountain Ranch, like the Taos hum. So you have that going on in the San Luis Valley. Strange box sightings. I know Trey talks about the box they encountered at the Meadows. We have the box encounters at Rocky Mountain Ranch, and there was a box in the Carl Higdon case out in Medicine Bow, Wyoming. And there was a box encounter with Nellie Lewis and in the San Luis Valley. There are a lot of strange markings on the ground. When I read that there was a 75-foot in diameter circle at the Snippy location, because if you follow my work, you know that in the APRO from the Colorado Rocky Mountain Ranch, they measured that landing site, that circle was 75 feet in diameter, and that is a pretty common circumference that is being measured with these circular craft. In fact, we had a guest on, what was his name? I sometimes lose names. Oh my gosh, it'll come to me. But in his dissertation for college, that was one of the commonalities for disc-shaped craft, was a 75-foot snowless circle left behind. There was one just recently found in Oregon too by a mutilation site. But one of the first pictures, these are the only known pictures in existence of Mom Lady, which was a dappled gray horse, 14 hands high, 1,200 pounds. And this is one of the only known pictures of Snippy alive as a colt, 1-month-old colt in this picture. Snippy was born in Estes Park, Colorado. Then he was boarded in Denver for a couple years and then moved to the San Luis Valley with Smokey, Lady, his mother. And then they had another horse named Sheba, who was also a brown horse, but didn't have the whites on his leg. And this is the only other picture of Snippy. This is Mother Lady, Snippy is a colt, and Burl Lewis. So to see these pictures was amazing, just incredible. this one, there's several of these two in the book, this whole series of pictures. So this, a lot of the pictures, this was the original handwriting that's written on the photographs. But back in the day, in the olden days, when people actually had film, do you remember this? And we had to go to Walgreens or a grocery store and develop the film. People would write on the back of pictures or underneath the pictures. And luckily for us, they did this with most of the pictures from the Snippy case. So this particular picture here, it says, Lady, Snippy's mother, these two horses, Sheba and Lady, were the horses that were with Snippy in pasture when killed, only witnesses to Snippy's murder. So really, we were able to put to rest the whole controversy of the horse's name and the horse's sex. Snippy was a 3-year-old male gelding colt. And somewhere along the line, Burl, for whatever reason, decided to change it to a female named Lady. We do not know why. He also said that Snippy was the horse he rode. That was not true either. Snippy was never saddled. Snippy was only told to lead and halt. He was set to be trained to saddle the week after his death. So he was never shod. He was never saddled. So Snippy was never rode. So we learned a lot through the documents. This is a good example of, there were pictures of other animals in the pasture that were going blind at the time. So this is a picture that was in the case file, and it says, sick calf in Harry King's corral. Black Angus bull and calf were blinded approximately the time of Snippy's death. And also in this photo, I don't know, you can't really see it probably that well on here.
Our radio audience can't see them. So
yeah, well, what it shows is a blind calf, but it also shows that the hooves on these animals were growing. Like, this hoof is like a ski sled. I mean, it was like really long, as if like radioactive, something was affecting these cattle and causing them to go blind. And not only that, but people as well were losing their sight and getting sick. So there's reports of people that were quite ill, headaches, neurological, symptoms, and blindness. In fact, one of the crazy things that happened, this was a cool picture too. This is a picture. How many of you like the 1964 Socorro, New Mexico case? One of the best cases in UFO history, in my opinion. This is the Socorro case, is the one that kind of turned J. Allen Hynek's mind, and believing, well, there's something going on here, right? So this is a picture of Don Richmond, who was an APRO investigator on the Snippy case, and Lonnie Zamora holding a casting they took of these strange marks that were found around Snippy's carcass. And they were comparing it to the marks left in the Socorro landing site. Now, they're quite different. They look quite different, but I think it's pretty cool that Lonnie Zamora was kind of working on the case with them. This one, Dave, I printed just for you.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. This is something that's really not talked about in connection with the Snippy case. They were strange animal tracks around the horse. This, do you see the... it looks like claws almost. It doesn't look like a Sasquatch print.
It almost looks like a grizzly bear print.
Right. It kind of, that's something we thought. Maybe it's a bear print, but they were quite large. They were bipedal, and they were said to be pretty. In this map right here, this was another thing in the file. They drew a crime scene map of Snippy's scene. So, and we learned so much more about the case. There were actually 3 fence posts that were sheared off like butter, like something came in right at the site. This was a map that they drew where they could see the tracks of the horse zigzagging. So you could see 3 sets of tracks, because remember, Smokey had died the week before. So that left Lady, Sheba, and Snippy. So you have 3 sets of horse tracks zigzagging through the pasture. It had rained that week, so the ground was very moist, and you could see tracks very easily. You can even see like little bird tracks. That's how moist the ground was. And it's something was herding these horses in a zigzag pattern. possibly a light or something. I don't know, a craft, a light, something was spooking these horses in a zigzag pattern. Then you see Snippy's tracks. You see the lady and Sheba run off to the ranch house, and then you see Snippy milling in a circle. And then you see no tracks, as if he's lifted and dropped. And what's fascinating, in some of the very first pictures of Snippy, you can clearly see that his back, it would be his back right leg is broken, as if dropped from above. And then what's really interesting too, which was not really talked about or reported that often, his rear left hind leg was stripped of flesh, just like his head and neck. So sorry for the graphic nature, but you could see the bare leg there.
For people who may not understand what an animal mutilation is, what happens to these animals?
Well, they're drained of blood, first and foremost. And I know through Linda Moulton Howe's work and Chuck Zukowski and others who really have made the animal death mutilations kind of their life's work. And I'm glad somebody's taken it on, because it's still one of those mysteries that is unsolved. And it's gruesome and sad. And it doesn't just affect cows. It affects horses. It affects elk, deer, even dog. There has been human mutilations. So, it's not just cattle, it's other animals as well, unfortunately. And talking with Paul Sinclair, there's been a rash of kangaroo mutilations, even some sea creatures that I've heard of this same kind of, organs, precision cuts, like laser precision, blood drained, organs removed. A lot of times the tongue is cut out, the eyes cut out, an ear, the soft tissue. A lot of times the the genitals are cut out and things like that. So, a lot of ranchers don't report them anymore. And with the Rocky Mountain Ranch and doing Beyond Skinwalker, that was one of the first things, and getting to meet some of the locals now and doing that show. These mutilations are still occurring. It's just not being reported, because ranchers know they just take a hit. They take a loss. A lot of them will write it off on their taxes. They don't want the stigma. They don't want publicity. Nothing's going to happen with it, because it's been going on for 50 plus years. So we just don't hear about them like we used to, but they're still going on, probably just as frequently.
With these animal mutilations that you just said that, many people aren't even reporting them anymore, why do you think that is? And the reason why I ask that is I know in the ranches, there's ranches northwest of me that have had cattle mutilations happen there. And I know the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the military have investigated those parts. Is it because maybe they don't want the military to get involved or the police to get involved, because the case always ends up a cold case and you never hear about it again?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And interviewing some of these old ranchers, I pulled a lot of the names from the old newspaper articles from back in the 70s, and I reached out to them, and thankfully some of them are still with us. And in interviewing these guys, there's one in particular. I'm up behind Pikes Peak, so I live up near Woodland Park, Colorado, and he actually has cattle that he grazes out here in Woodland Park. And for 3 4th of Julys in a row, he has had a mutilated cow, 4th of July night in Woodland Park. And so it's by Red Rock Campground. And what's really interesting, so if you go to Rocky Mountain Ranch YouTube channel, I actually went to this location, and he said they're under the power poles. He would find these cattle there. But what's really strange is the Red Rocks Campground is right there, and 4th of July weekend's really busy. So you have a lot of people camping really close to where these mutilations are occurring. You have power poles, so you don't have helicopters or anything dropping these animals, yet he's finding blood drain, organs removed, precision. He showed me the photographs. I went out there last 4th of July. Of course, nothing happens last 4th of July. But and I asked him that very question, why don't you report him? Well, because it's been going on for 50 years. Nothing happens. Like, he doesn't want to deal with the military. He doesn't want to deal with the police. It's just a loss for these ranchers. Plus, they don't want the stigma. Down by Guffey, down the road, there's a rancher that loses quite a few cattle to mutilations, and he doesn't report them either for that same reason,
Would they allow someone like yourself in there. I know we're going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but this is something that I think, like in my own investigations of Flight 21, it may end up going that way, because we're going to have to shut down our investigations once the snow starts falling here in November, and it won't clear up until the beginning of May in that area. So I'm thinking along the lines, like, I know that the mutilations are tied to this area of high strangeness. Is that something you do, is just reach out to these ranchers, these farmers, to see if you can give a helping hand? And if so, how receptive are they?
Yeah, I think it's, it's gaining just trust with some of these ranchers. We all know a lot of these small town people, including myself even, they like to kind of stay to themselves, right? But in getting to know a few people out in Elbert County, after we filmed season 1, I got a text like, "You're not going to believe what happened to my neighbor. She has 700 acres. They have a $5,500 prize bull, was out there grazing in the morning just fine. In the middle of the afternoon, miles off the county road, that bull is mutilated, dead." Freaked her out. Have the pictures. I sent them to Linda Howe, that kind of thing. So I think it's just a matter of gaining like trust and confidentiality with these people that, hey, we'll take a look at it. I'll send it to the experts I know and tell you what we can find out. But at the end of the day, these haven't been solved in over 50 years. And so they're like, well, what makes you think we're going to get to the bottom of this now? It's just this wild phenomenon that it's still just this huge mystery.
3 minutes to go here before we have to go to break at the top of the hour. Katie Paige from Rocky Mountain Ranch Research. In British Columbia, there's Rocky Mountain House, so that's where I get a little tongue-tied.
Like a party house?
Yeah, right? Who or what do you think is causing these cattle animal mutilations?
I think it's a combination of probably our own, I don't want to say it's military or CIA, but I mean, obviously we had the mysterious blacked out helicopter, so we know there's a military presence. I wonder about, it seems like they're testing maybe the water and the soil and mad cow disease, and you have a lot of nuclear missiles, silo sites near some of these. I think Christopher O'Brien, actually, if you go to his website still, you can see a map that he did where he was kind of going down this rabbit hole of, wow, a lot of these mutilations are happening near these sites. So that might be part of it. But we have cattle that are dropped from, Snippy was obviously dropped from above. I don't think these helicopters, nobody's hearing helicopters coming down and taking these animals. No footprints left around Snippy. So there's definitely high strangeness, mysterious something happening, and maybe a sliver of it. I think it's a small portion is done by man. I think it's just a mystery that we don't understand.
See, I would normally agree with exactly what you're saying, but coming from where I am in Canada, knowing that we don't have nuclear wastelands here or weaponry or silos or anything like that, and we don't really have a large contingent of military bases, even though around these ranch areas, I do know that there is a military training facility there. We don't get a lot of helicopter action because, well, let's face it, the Canadian military doesn't have a lot of helicopters. Okay.
And so are you getting
But
mutilations there though too?
But what I'm saying though is with these areas where I know they have been reported, I don't see how it could be government invested if, say, a country like Canada or other countries don't have the military backdrop that, say, the United States does. In your case, I could see that. Here, as we got about a minute to go, I don't see that happening.
Right. That's why I think that the vast majority are something else. Now, whether this is like the crop circles, right? It's kind of the same kind of phenomenon as crop circles. We all know we have the pictures of people out there with the boards, and some of the crop circles look really man-made and sloppy and this isn't done by aliens or something else. But then you have the ones that are intricate and perfect, and there's no way that somebody is going to create something this mind-blowing in the darkness in the middle of the night with no sound, no lights, going undetected. It's sort of that same kind of thing with the cattle mutilations or animal deaths, the strange animal deaths. I don't even like to call them cattle mutilations anymore because it's just not cattle. And then again, we have I didn't realize cattle rustlers. There was just recently this last year, Colorado had 180 missing. Most of them were calves, just vanish. They were never found. Where did these cattle go?
We're going to continue this when we come back on Spaced Out Radio. Katie Paige, Rocky Mountain Ranch Research in Colorado. Cattle mutilations, are they aliens? Are they wanting a good steak? We don't know. We'll be right back.
Is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
All right, we are clear. I'm going to put you in the green room for right now, and then I'm just going to disappear. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay.
Got about a minute to go here. Bring Katie Paige back in. Mayhem, how are you doing? Who else? Troy SR71, how you doing? And who else has joined us here? Let's see here. Thank you to Necessary Dialogue for a lone super chat tonight. Greatly appreciate the love and support. And we're going to continue with the mutilation portion of this when we return. I'm so pumped. So pumped. I love stories like this. Not just the topic, but just something different. Don't forget you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag, so make sure you check it on out. Here we go. We're kicking off hour number 2 talking about animal mutilations. My name is Dave Scott. Katie Paige from Rocky Mountain Ranch Research is our guest tonight. How y'all doing? You enjoying tonight's show? I am. This is just incredible information that we are getting tonight. Hi to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network, our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Yielding. Yielding is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night, right here on Spaced Out Radio. She's Katie Paige, Rocky Mountain Research. We're talking about the mysterious case of Zippy the horse. Make that Snippy the horse. Flippy, whatever you want to call it. Snippy the horse. Mutilated by what? Who? Where? Aliens? Paranormal? Military? So many questions to go on with this. Katie, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, it's the mystery, just reading these letters and documents and all these reports. And the cool thing is, not only does the National UFO Historical Record Center has original Blue Book and NICAP and CUFOS and APRO, but all these audio recordings. So there was many recordings. So they had an actual interview with Ben Phillips, who ended up getting the nickname Lightning Ben because his big theory, and we talk about all the kind of crazy theories on what happened to Snippy in the book, but of course one of the first things, he was just hit by lightning. Well, there's no evidence of lightning whatsoever. I mean, there's been other animals hit by lightning. A lot of these ranchers and veterinarians know what lightning looks like. They actually had a number of professionals look and examine Snippy. Dr. Altschuler was one. He went undisclosed for a long time because of his reputation, but he was an expert in the field, and he was perplexed with Snippy's case. Not only that, but he also went and observed just the valley and had his own UFO sighting in the valley, which sort of like blew his mind away. But there's just so many things. We were talking earlier before the break about telltale signs of a classic animal mutilation. And one thing that was certainly evident in Snippy's case was, that no animals would approach this horse. You can actually see, and they mapped it on the map, that you could see coyote droppings and you could see coyote tracks like circling around where Snippy lay, but they never approached him. And then weeks later, when they finally did try to eat on Snippy, those coyotes died of dysentery. Even the maggots that eventually showed up around Snippy also died when they ate on the horse. So that's another telltale sign of a classic mutilation, that no other animals will approach or eat these mutilated animals for whatever reason. I don't know if it's because, they actually went out and checked the radiation levels around the horse, and they found high radiation readings outside of, where Snippy was. But the closer they got to the carcass of Snippy, the readings actually were less. So where in reality it should be opposite. So they had opposite results. So the radiation readings were high away from Snippy, and they lowered when they got close to Snippy, and it should have been opposite. So very unusual readings as well. Another thing, you need to get the book. It's available in paperback. It's also in Kindle and audio, but you need to get at least the Kindle or the paperback, because there's so many pictures that have never been seen, like of evidence. These strange marks in the ground, which they casted, squashed Chico brushes and sliced Chico brushes, just like in the Lonnie Zamora case. Very, very similar. They're almost like identical in a lot of ways. But what's really interesting is Ernest Wellington, the neighbor, from the Dead Cow Ranch, and Nellie Lewis, they're examining the scene around Snippy, and Nellie finds this strange looking, what she calls a tool in the Chico brush. And it said it had horse mane on it. So we have the original recordings of Nellie talking about this. And she's like, what is this strange looking? She said it looked like a gizzard. She picks it up with a couple of sticks and starts poking at this thing, and this green paste or ooze comes out of it. There was also a very strong medicinal smell around Snippy right after his mutilation, and it lingered in the air for a few days. And this strange green ooze was seen around the horse as well. So that was another kind of funny theory that was in the newspapers at the time, that they theorized that somebody, must have, as a prank, built this like tripod thing out of logs or something, and got a big barrel of acid and hung Snippy up and dipped his head in the acid. This crazy theory. There's no truck marks, there's no footprints, it's just insane. And then the funniest one that was actually in the newspaper was that it was radioactive ants that were like these nuclear ants that came and ate Snippy's flesh. Just ludicrous things, that they theorized happened to the horse. And so, yeah, here's a picture of that. That was in the paper, this like tripod thing where they just hung Snippy upside down and put his head in a vat of acid. It was like, no.
So with this radiation that was being centered, I know in other cases of animal mutilations, scavenger animals, whether it's vultures or coyotes or anything along those lines, usually will not even come close to the area. And it seems to take months and months for these creatures to finally dissolve themselves. Was that happening in this area as well, or were the predatory scavenger animals trying to feed off of it?
Nope, they left Snippy alone. And like I said, when the coyotes did try to finally eat on Snippy, they died of dysentery. So something was very wrong. And there's so many interesting things about this case, and why it's so important to go back and take a second look at these old historical cases. When Nellie and they find Snippy, his bones are bleach white, as if Snippy had been laying in the hot desert sun for years. And then a week later, they turn a bright pink color. And then after that, they turn a black color. And that is very, very unusual and unexplained. There was this powder in the brain cavity and the stomach. Like I said, the green ooze, there were burn marks, like exhaust marks on the dirt that were unusual, smashed Chico brushes, the fence posts that were sheared off. And like I mentioned earlier, in this case, this was another interesting thing. They really did a really good investigation. This is some of the pictures of the exhaust burn marks around the area, but they also, this was like the second case, and I'm sometimes really bad at remembering what the first case was. I think it was called the Burgess. But under the ground there were burned roots, not above ground. On the ground they were normal, but underneath the ground there were singed, burned roots, which is really interesting as well. And they tested those. So they tested soil, they tested, the horse mane, they tested meat, they tested the ooze, they tested the tool, and a lot of the reports were in the files, so they're included in this book as well. But just so many different things that were going on. UFO pictures that were in the file that were reported in the area from different people. In fact, there's a cemetery close to there, and there was a family. It was known to be a haunted cemetery, and the night of Snippy's capture, they witnessed strange lights over the King Ranch. So there could have been witnesses to Snippy's capture in strange lights that were viewed over the King Ranch that night.
Now, UFO enthusiasts will say, you know what, we believe, and I believe a lot of them are CGI or now AI videos of seeing cattle or animals being sucked into a craft or dropped into a craft. I don't believe them. Okay, I want to believe, but I know it's not true. Do we know if there was, during that time, a high percentage, maybe in the months previous or the weeks previous, of UFO sightings, and even after?
Tons. Yeah. Tons before, years after, still going on to this day. In fact, if your listeners just type in 10 mysterious mountains of Colorado, the very first one they talk about is Mount Blanca. There's been ships in and out of Mount Blanca seen flying in as if like something doorway opens up on the side of the mountain, very much like Mount Shasta. So that's been going on for a long time. There were these pictures right here. There's a cool Mustang in this picture too, by the way, a cool fastback. But these boys, and of course, since this made, headline news across the world, there were many onlookers and people that were coming out to the valley and taking pictures. But there were, let me find the one picture here too. There was one picture in particular, and we can't quite pinpoint the location. At first, we thought it was at the Snippy location, which we had the privilege of being able to go to the site, which we'll probably never get to again because somebody else owns it now, and they're not happy about all the publicity of Snippy. And I don't think they're that thrilled that we're kind of breathing new life into the case, but too bad, so sad, because it's an important case in history. But this one particular picture, this one right here, you can see an oblong shape UFO or UAP very clearly in this photograph. And I've looked at that picture extensively. So yeah, there were definitely UFO sightings all through the valley, and still are, to this day. So
did a lot of people talk about being abducted during those sightings?
Well, it's kind of interesting, and this is where we kind of get into the more woo things. But and Kerry King is okay with us talking about this, and he was okay with putting it in the book. But Nellie Lewis, who owned the horse, her mother Agnes King, and this is just part of the times back then. I mean, it's a hard life out there ranching, especially out in the San Luis Valley. It's windy. It's just rough conditions. They had no, they didn't have a phone. They talked by radio. They didn't have water. They had the well. So it's a rough life. And she had 12 children and lost half of her children. So there was a set of twins, Faye and May. And May passed away when she was 12 years old from a pneumonia. And May is set to haunt the cemetery up there. So people would go, do paranormal investigations at the local cemeteries. And Agnes King and Nellie King kind of got into some esoteric kind of practices too. And as you can imagine, being a mother, losing that many children, that kind of a rough life on the ranch, they did kind of play around, and there was a journal that Nellie kept that they played with the Ouija board. And even Dr. Leo Sprinkle and other investigators would go up there and kind of open maybe some things up with playing around with the esoteric side of things. And Nellie claimed to have communications with an extraterrestrial. And there is a picture of the logo on here, but it was basically a triangle with a snake on their uniforms and things like that. So she did claim that she had communications with ET. And even Agnes, who really had a hard time wrapping her head around, UFOs and aliens, and she thought it was kind of out there, she even admits in an audio tape that she would see and hear these hum sounds coming over the ranch that she could not explain.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems to be piecing it all together, don't you think?
Yeah, even the box. Yep.
Outside of Snippy, were other animals mutilated in that area as well?
Yeah, that's what blew my mind too. Not only learning about Smokey dying the week before Snippy, which was like, holy cow, but no pun intended, holy horse. Sorry, that's bad. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm getting punchy. It's late. Anyway, no, but learning of other horses around the area, just recently, Dave Marler reaches out and he goes, "You're not going to believe this. There's 2 more recordings." So, he went and digitized the recordings. Thank goodness, because some of these recordings are getting warped and we could lose them forever if we weren't digitizing this information. And it's invaluable information that we have. But in that particular recording, while Don Richmond they're conducting their investigation of Snippy, another family or somebody comes up to the ranch and says, "We have another dead horse 3 miles down the road." So live with the recordings, they're going to this other horse that had just been mutilated in a pretty similar fashion as Snippy. There's some commonalities that make it very similar. They're similar, and there's some things that don't really match either. But the mere fact that there were other horses in the area that were being mutilated at the same time is pretty compelling. And there was another one too, in another report, that they found mutilated that was put down a well. So yeah, and like I mentioned, there were calves going blind, cows being mutilated. So Snippy was not the only animal in the valley at that time. He's just the one that made headline news.
All right, let's continue on here. As we talk with Katie Paige from Rocky Mountain Research or Ranch, because I so didn't want to say Rocky Mountain House. Rocky Mountain Ranch Research. There we are. It finally came out. UFOs, animal mutilations. What about paranormal? Was there paranormal activity being seen around this as well? Ghosts, spirits, weird lights, you name it?
For sure. That's why it's so, to me, where I thought I was just reinvestigating a mutilated animal, it turned out to have all of the check boxes, all of them down the line, from the sounds to the paranormal. And what's really interesting too, when kind of switching gears from the Snippy case, but going to the Beyond Skinwalker, there's the Millers that, Sally and Tom Miller from Trinidad, Colorado, who have had many mutilated cows on their ranch, some dropped from above in a tree, and on and on. And I went down to do an interview. Rocky Mountain Ranch Research went down and interviewed Tom and Sally Miller. And it ended up being a 2-part series on my YouTube channel, because the first thing I wanted to talk to them about was not the animal deaths, but was the hitchhiker phenomenon. Did they experience the paranormal stuff? I wanted to talk about all of that. And I wasn't surprised to hear that they absolutely had all the hitchhiker kind of things. I mean, they even had a knife just fly across their kitchen. They hear disembodied, voices in the house, those kind of things. And they said something to me that really stuck with me that I hadn't really considered or heard about mutilated animals and ranchers. But I asked them, why do you think certain ranchers their cattle aren't touched, and other ranchers seem to have multiple mutilated animals. Why is that happening? What is the difference there? And the Miller said to me, well, what's fascinating, they feel like whatever is mutilating the animals is almost just as attracted to the ranchers that are living on these properties as they are the animals. In other words, they're hit with this hitchhiker phenomenon or the paranormal stuff on top of the mutilated animals, and it doesn't hit everybody equally. So it's almost like they're being attracted to the people or the land, or a combination, or both. But I don't think that's anything that's been looked at that closely before, is that hitchhiker phenomenon in connection with the ranches that are being targeted for mutilations.
Were these locations where this land is it around First Nations land reserves?
Oh, the San Luis Valley is such a sacred place for all sorts of tribes, mostly the Ute, but all these different warring tribes. Like in Elbert County, we had the Cheyenne, the Comanche, the Pawnee, the Cherokee, the Kiowa, the Ute, and it was really a kind of like a nomadic land where they didn't live there full time, but it was kind of hunting grounds. There was a lot of rivers and creeks and streams, and ripe with buffaloes and that. So it was very nomadic in nature, and you had tribes that really aligned with one another, and warring tribes as well. But in the San Luis Valley, it's such a sacred location, and Mount Blanca is such a sacred mountain that there was no battles, nothing fought there, because it was so sacred to the native tribes of that area, and still is to this day. Very sacred.
What about skinwalkers or wendigos? Have those been seen in the area?
Cryptids are an interesting piece of this puzzle, and very similar to Rocky Mountain Ranch too. And this is a kind of something I don't talk a lot about, because it's one of those things, well, believe me or don't believe me, it doesn't matter to me at this point. But in researching the Rocky Mountain Ranch, obviously we had what my mom called when I was little the white fuzzies, because they were Sasquatch in nature, but they were like gray haired. So for whatever reason, maybe my mom didn't want to terrorize me or whatever, she called them white fuzzies. But in the case of, the Apple report and stuff, these Sasquatch creatures from Rocky Mountain Ranch, they would kind of, bang on the walls and kind of menace or watch from, the ranch or the tree line. Sometimes they would throw rocks. They had an encounter with these strange boxes, which is in the report, and so on and so forth. Also in the San Luis Valley, in the Snippy case, there were cryptids seen, Bigfoot type creatures, but also what was reported at Rocky Mountain Ranch, in which I actually saw one run across the road with my son and daughter in the Jeep when we were out scouring around Kiowa early on in my investigations, are these platypus creatures. They look like they have like duck bill, like platypuses, and they're native to Australia. They shouldn't be in Colorado. And I witnessed one go across the road. But when I was reading a report that Nellie Lewis saw a platypus cryptid creature in Lake Como by Mount Blanca, I was like, wait, what? And there's also cryptid birds in these locations as well, in Elbert County, Colorado, and across the state, so that goes hand in hand with a lot of the reports we're hearing on strange cryptids.
Katie, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We have you for another 30 minutes on Spaced Out Radio talking about weird cases. We're going to get into some of your other research. I want to talk about Roswell too, as we are around the Roswell date right now as we broadcast, and I know that is a passion of yours as well. Katie Paige, we love her around here. She is from Rocky Mountain Ranch Research. There, I got it right. And we're going to be right back to talk Roswell with Katie Paige. So stay tuned. This is Spaced Out Radio. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, we're clear. Hi, Jerence Carter. How are you? Green-eyed lady from Texas. How are you? Little Mikey Bothwell. Nice to see you.
What is it about all the green-eyed people? And I'm to the point now, after talking to so many experiencers, if I meet somebody with green eyes, I'm like, okay, you've experienced something. Have you found that to be true, Dave?
I haven't found it to be true, but I do find it interesting.
Yeah.
I like the green eyes.
Mm-hmm. Very pretty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go get some water really quickly,
You
if
go.
that's okay. All right.
You go. Y'all having fun in our chat room tonight? Great crowd here tonight. Thank you all for coming on in. I hope you are having fun like I am. Yes, for those who just came in, today is the 60th anniversary of the Flight 21 incident here in my town. I wanted to go out there, but didn't have time. Probably best I didn't. You never know what would have happened. All right, there's little Katie Paige right there coming on back in. Here we go. There she is.
Thank you.
Is that a water or a Pepsi?
It is a water. I haven't had Pepsi. I actually was always a Coke drinker. Pepsi is very, very sweet. I was a big rum and Coke drinker for a while. Sailor Jerry's and Coke. But I kicked that habit, thank goodness.
I still like a good vodka 7.
That's good too. That's my second
With some
choice.
lime in there. Oh, that's nice.
Good drink.
It's very nice. I can't believe our last video we put up already has like 2,500 views on it. I'm
That's
blown away by that.
That's so good.
I checked this morning and it was like, because I kind of geek out on things like that. Not that I'm a numbers freak or anything, but I can't believe there's like 2,500 people that have watched that. It's pretty cool.
That's the one you did on location?
Yeah, we've got 5 of them out there now.
Oh, that's on. I think people like to go along with you on your adventures. And that was kind of my premise for Rocky Mountain Ranch Research too, to kind of go on location and bring folks along with me. It's one thing to sit at home and research things and go through documents and archives. It's another thing to go actually on location, like going to the Carl Higdon. That was weird. You know, you stay in Rawlings and you're driving out to Medicine Bow and it's like all open. And I'm like, this is nothing like I thought it was going to be. And it's miles and miles and miles, just kind of open area where you could see for miles. Then you get to where Carl Higdon had his encounter with the elk and with Asa One and that whole strange thing. And it feels creepy and it's wooded and it's just, it has this lake there. And I'm like, oh, yep, this is where this went down. Like it was very similar to rock. And unless you're there and feel it, you can't really get that from reading a report. You really have to go. Mm-hmm. So I encourage people, I mean, to be safe. I mean, and that was it too. There was like a squatter like within a mile. And I was more afraid of that than I was Asa One or a spaceship coming down, because you don't know, you're out there. I mean, I didn't think to bring a weapon or anything, which was probably stupid on my part, because you don't know what you're going to encounter. So I hope when you're out there adventuring, you at least bring protection of some sort.
Oh yeah, we're always carrying. We don't carry for the sake of the cryptids. We carry for the sake of the animals that are out there. Because you pretty much have the same animals we do up here.
Mountain lions.
The grizzly bears, the black bears, the mountain lions, the moose, the wolf packs.
Right.
You know, all sorts of stuff that really wants to hurt you.
Right, especially if
second.
they're taking care of their babies. You don't want to mess around with a moose.
Absolutely.
Mother moose.
1 second here. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Thank you to Necessary Dialogue, Stacy and T-Bone, my man, for the great super chats. We greatly appreciate your love and support of SOR. Thank you very, very much. For your mind, how are you? Don't forget you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag, so check it on out. And we're going to get going here in about 7 seconds. Here we go with the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. We greatly appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hey, we want to say to you that all of our archives are free. You could join us on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here we go. Katie Paige, we have her till the top of the hour. She's from Rocky Mountain Ranch Research out of beautiful Colorado. And what a state it is, a state of UFOs, a state of high strangeness, paranormal activity, skinwalkers, wendigos, cryptids like Bigfoot. Oh, it has a little bit of everything. Katie, welcome back.
I'm glad to be here.
All right, we're going to switch from Colorado. We're going to move you down to Roswell, New Mexico, as we just celebrated the anniversary of the Roswell incident once again. And no matter what happens in ufology, Roswell still is the golden goose, but we can't find the golden egg. When you look back on all these years of Roswell research, and I know you've gone down many rabbit holes, including where they may have buried the deceased aliens, what do you look at this time of year?
Well, as a Rocky Mountain Ranch research, I like to kind of stay Colorado focused. And so, there's a case that came across when I was part of MUFON, the state director. I was part of this special group they called the Special Assignment Team, or the SAT team. And a case came across that's how I came across this case. And it involved a rumor by a Brigadier General Arthur Exxon, who rumored that one of the Roswell bodies ended up in a mortuary outfit in Denver. And so to kind of put the story in a neat little package, there was a couple out of California who worked with a mortician that lived in New Mexico. In Truth or Consequences, he has since passed, but luckily for us, I got to go out and interview him twice, cameras, and got his testimony on film, on camera, with this couple from California. And he basically was a mortician at a mortuary outfit in Denver. And in the basement where they stored the chairs was a vault, and it sat in the corner year after year after year after year. And he was, got curious. Like, he didn't think there was a body in it sitting there for all this time. And so curiosity got the cat, got him curious about it. And he finally asked, what's up with this? And he goes, oh, there's a federal judge that has a hold on this body. So this federal judge, when I did a research on him, he was appointed by Nixon. And he was a 33-degree Mason and also a Shriner at this particular lodge next to the mortuary in Denver. There's a Fitzsimmons-Lowry connection, and there's this lodge connection. But this particular federal judge who had this hold on this body in this mortuary in Denver basically was the infectious disease specialist. He worked on the toxic shock syndrome. If you remember that whole big case, he worked on the big land land spill out here by Fort Logan. And he also was the crash retrieval specialist. And you want to talk about a crazy synchronicity. So I'm doing this research on this supposed, Roswell body and this alien that was stored in this vault in Denver, and was doing the research on this federal judge appointed by Nixon. And I was doing a talk at my mom. She was at an assisted living home at the time. And I just went to do like a UFOs 101. I was telling them about this Roswell body, Denver connection, and the Eisenhowers, Mamie Eisenhower's from Denver. So there's a huge Eisenhower connection to all of this as well, and a Denver connection. And turns out that judge's widow lived on the 7th floor when I was giving that talk. So I ended up having 2 interviews with the judge's widow, who happened to be in the same building as my mother. And I learned some mind-blowing information from this woman about, the Eisenhower connection and this federal judge, and basically his trips back and forth to Roswell and other crashes. There was many crash retrievals out of New Mexico during this time. Roswell wasn't the only one. So yeah, I do believe I know where this little body is. And it's an ongoing investigation, and it's really, really compelling. I've talked to Don Schmidt about it. I really want to talk to Tim Hogan. He's a local Colorado guy, and he has connections, as we know, to the Masons and the lodges and stuff. So I think he may have some pieces of the puzzle, and with any luck, the right people will cross my path, and maybe we'll get more information on this compelling Roswell Denver body mystery.
Why would they bury a potential alien body in a human cemetery? That makes no sense to me.
Right. It's a fair question. And when this mortician, his name's Lou, I'll just give his first name. When he pulled his caper, he wrote a little book. It's actually at the Roswell Museum behind glass lock case. I have a copy of it here. But his wife goes to Kansas to visit his mom, or her mom. And so he pulls his caper where he goes and unseals the vault. And this is, to his surprise, he's thinking this is empty, right? He opens, it was a vault within a vault within a vault. He said there was a child-sized coffin. It was wrapped in 7 layers of cloth, and it was covered in formaldehyde. He said all the visceral was removed, the genitals were removed, had a heavy brow, orifices for ears. And my first question to Lou was, why didn't you take a picture if you thought this was an alien body from Roswell? And he said he was, number one, shocked that there was a body in it. He was shocked that it was a child-sized body. He didn't think aliens. He didn't believe in UFOs. He wasn't even in that frame of mind. He thought it was a hydrocephalic child, like a very deformed body of a child. And he was mortified that he disrupted this child's peace, so he quickly wrapped the thing up. And it wasn't until many years later that he was hang gliding in Truth or Consequences and went into Roswell and learned about the rumored Denver body connection. And that's when he was like, oh my gosh, that's what I witnessed. And that's how it all unfolded. So, the rest is history. But yeah, the reason I think one body, because they went to Texas, and I think one was taken to Fitzsimmons Lowry, because it was one of the top military hospitals at the time. But I believe that there might have been some sort of specialist, an organ or something within this little body that they wanted whatever specialist to look at there at Fitzsimmons Lowry. And I did ask Don Schmidt, we know that Lowry was out there in Roswell at the crash scene. So there is definitely a connection to that.
Do you think the Roswell case will ever be solved to the satisfaction of ufology? Yeah,
I think someday. I'm hopeful for that. I do think that even within, I've been down to the Eisenhower archives, and since I kind of have a theory on what happened in interviewing the judge's widow, I kind of have more clues to the puzzle, and I've uncovered some documents that I can't wait to share one of these days when I'm ready to just push this all out to the public and go, okay, here's what I got. Tell me what y'all think. because I think if we can just get these little nuggets of information, it might blow something wide open. And this might be one of those cases that might happen. And the reason I think they would bury it and not destroy it or whatever, I think there was a personal connection between the Eisenhowers and this being. And I think they feel, and really where I think this body is, it's very well protected. Like nobody's going to get to it where it's at. So
have you ever found where it's buried?
I believe I know, yes.
Are you willing to talk about that or no?
Well, I can tell you that it's in a very protective location. And I can tell you that when they moved one body, they put in the other one, and it was done under nightfall. And these are some of the documents I've uncovered. I got the flight manifestos, the whole just documents between the Eisenhowers through the Eisenhower archives. And I don't know if many people know, but Dwight Eisenhower lost a son, Dowd. Okay. So that's my clue. I could tell you that much. Eisenhower lost a son. They moved Dowd, and I think there was a kind of a switcheroo going on during that time when they moved the body.
So it's just so if I get this correct, you think a body was moved to be replaced by an alien body to hide the secrets that there is one buried in Colorado.
Yeah, in fact, where this body now lies, and year after year, I visited this location, and this whole place is very green and well kept, except where I believe the body is. And where that body is, it's dry, dead dirt. And the stones have been removed. So if you go to this particular location, I'm just trying to give little clues without saying everything. They'll actually go into the computer and give you a map to where they say this body still is, but it's not there anymore. And it's been switched, I think, with the alien body. And nothing grows there. So, years ago, somebody wanted to buy all my research, and I wouldn't sell it at that time, nor is it for sale. And so that whole thing got poo-pooed because I wasn't going to give away all my research or sell my research or anything like that because I'm not done with it yet. And then the Beyond Skinwalker came in, and I started really focusing on the ranch. So the Roswell body stuff has kind of been put on the back burner, but I'm really getting to the point where I really want to do more research and go back to the Eisenhower archives and all that. Kind of got shut down during COVID years, and I just switched gears, but I need to get back to the Roswell stuff because I think, if I can find more evidence and blow that wide open, it could be huge, huge news if I can prove that.
Is there a point where a story like that or a research project like that, Katie, you could get potentially targeted in trouble?
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. In fact, I think I've been intentionally guided to focus elsewhere. But, I'm kind of silly in that regard where I'm like, stop me if you can. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But yeah, I want to reopen it and see what else I can find on it. But I am ready to revisit. And I do have a list of people. I would love to talk to Laura Eisenhower about it. I've reached out to her. Like I said, I want to talk to Tim Hogan about it. There's some people on my list that might have some pieces of the puzzle. And I think really by sharing and working together, like I've talked to Don Schmidt about the Mason connection, because not a lot of people put that together with the Roswell case. But he's like, yeah, there were Masons involved.
You mentioned that you may have been put down an improper path. What does that mean?
I feel like I've been steered to focus elsewhere, if that makes sense.
By people or the phenomena?
By people. By two individuals in particular.
Mm-hmm. Has that happened often?
Well, it definitely happened. So when I was state director for Colorado and this kind of came across, which, by the way, the family of Lou and the Roswell body, I had them sign papers. So it's no longer a MUFON case because I was putting so much time and money and effort. I'm traveling to archives. I'm traveling back and forth to Truth or Consequences and doing all this stuff. So I had the family, Lou and his wife, basically say, you know what, this is your case, you take it. So I did do that. But during that time when I was state director, I had a couple certain individuals just kind of show up to a board meeting And let's just say they kind of influenced some of my work, funded some of my research, and led me down certain paths, which kind of led me away from the Roswell body. And unfortunately, one of these people just passed away 6 months ago. That was one of those people that was kind of steering what I was doing with my work. So yes, that happens, and I know it happens.
Looking at the UFO world, we are still very much enthralled with the entire Roswell case. What needs to come out, in your opinion? This will be my final question on this topic. What needs to come out about this case in order to prove that it's existing? Because I don't see the government or the military coming out saying we picked up a flying saucer and alien bodies.
Right. Well, and that's where I kind of, as important as I think it is to have all these new, I don't even like saying the word so much, these whistleblowers that are kind of coming out one after the other. I think it's important. And I'm really happy that people are starting to talk more openly about the topic, right? And hopefully they're going to be protected and not lose their jobs or their pilot's license and so on and so forth. But I am not one to believe all the narratives either, because we all know the story, of Benowitz and Richard Doty and the disinformation. And certainly that was going on at Rocky Mountain Ranch. And I believe it continues to this day. So are they ever going to come out and say, even if they did, how many people are really going to believe it? Yes, there were alien bodies. Yes. Until we have really hard, gosh, I don't even know if documents would necessarily, because people, even MJ12 documents get scrutinized left and right. These are true. People believe they're not true. Like, what is it going to take? I guess I don't know. I don't know, Dave, what it's going to take, other than for researchers and investigators and the public at large to just keep talking and sharing their experiences and kind of be fearless about it. What was really going on. And I really believe it kind of boils down to a lot of the CIA and a lot of these, nefarious things they were up to unsuspecting people in the population, men, women, children, families, small towns. This was going on for sure. And it's covered up so deep. And that's what needs to come to light.
But I mean, that's 78 years ago. The majority of people from that incident have died off. I hate to put it that way, but that's the truth of it all. How do we resurrect information? Because you're not going to get firsthand information anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's really true. And certainly with the Snippy case, people are like, why are you looking at a case from 1967? Well, like I just said, I mean, the King family, this is a generational thing. And same with the Roswell. When you have an event that significant, these stories, just like with folklore, they get passed down generation to generation, and they affect the families and the towns and the people for decades and decades. So they're not ever really lost. And not only that, but just look at all the pictures and documents and recordings that we uncovered just on this case alone. How many more cases in history are like that, where we're looking at, it's 50 plus years old evidence, but it's still evidence. I didn't know there were boxes. I didn't know there were holes in the ground. I didn't know there were all these pictures of craft that, it's time to take a second look at all this stuff, because we know so much more now than we did then, and we can make these connections and these parallels. And that's same with the Roswell case. It's never too late to look at these historic cases. I just want to scream that from the rooftops. It's never too late. Even the Higdon case with the boxes and this, there's so many parallels that nobody was putting that together because we didn't have the internet and podcasts and all these wonderful things we have now where we can talk to each other and really start putting this all together. That's why I feel hopeful. Like, some days maybe we can put it all together, figure out what these dang boxes are.
Where do you find time to do anything else outside of these cases at Rocky Mountain Ranch, and as well as the Roswell one you're going to open up? How do you find time for it all?
Well, I don't. It's like we wake up and 7 days a week from minute we get up 8 a.m. to 1 in the morning, it's pretty much we're doing one thing or another. So it just never ends. Yeah, you get some burnout from time to time, but then you find some new mind-blowing piece of information, like the rabbit hole I'm going right now through Thomas H. Badinsky. Like, this is a whole, I'm like, oh my gosh. And it just keeps me going and going and going. And maybe someday I'll be able to share where this body is, and maybe we can get ground penetrating radar and uncover something with the help of some folks. I don't know.
4 minutes to go. Let's get to a couple audience questions. Necessary Dialogue's asking, are there documented cases of human mutilations in this area?
Yeah, unfortunately, I've seen some pretty graphic pictures that are pretty terrorizing. And obviously, it's a topic a lot of people don't even like to acknowledge, let alone research or discuss. But there's been some pretty graphic, classic mutilations of, I saw a photograph of a woman in her seatbelt, tongue moved, eye, just like a cattle. It's pretty graphic and it's pretty horrifying.
All right, next question would be from Herb here. Katie, have you ever done paranormal investigations in Cripple Creek, Colorado? Went there once and left after 10 minutes. The energy was so bad.
Cripple Creek, it's a gambling town. It's, I don't know about bad energy, but what's interesting, there's some mines out there, and just recently had a witness and a daughter, very credible, worked for a major airline, who sees interesting crafts in and around these mines. So again, we're talking water, geological elements that may be attracting some of these crafts. So yes, and like I mentioned, on the way to Cripple Creek is a rancher that has had several mutilations, will not report them. I just know it because I know a friend of a friend. So I would love to get out there and meet some more of these ranchers. And I would love to just say, hey, look, here's a safe place where you can at least report them, so we can at least document how often this is going on. So, yeah.
Final question from our audience for you tonight. From Paramarv, has there been any pushback on your investigations from government, military, or Men in Black?
I did have an interesting guy. Now, I didn't suspect him as a Men in Black per se. He came to a meeting one day in a jean jacket, hair pulled in a ponytail, introduced himself as being a special officer from the United States Air Force, said he wanted to talk to me, gave me a card. I never heard from him again, but it was weird. Like, that whole day, I was like, what the heck was this about? I wouldn't be surprised if, at the very least, some of my stuff's at least being watched to see how far maybe I get, or if I get too close, maybe I'll get a knock on the door. I did actually, somebody told me to steer clear of Crestone. So of course, in good old Katie fashion, where do I go? To Crestone. It's a small, sleepy little town. I'm like, I don't know what could be going on here. It certainly seems innocent enough to me, but who knows? I don't know.
I don't know how I would react. Like, I've never, in my 10 years of doing this show, I've never got the knock on the door. I've never got the phone call. I've never got it. And now, I do know a couple of my guests have got the phone call saying, you may have spoke too much right there. Be careful what you're saying, because they were people who worked in the, industry, shall we say. But I've never got that. I don't know how I would react.
Get it now.
Right? Oh, hey, this is where, Katie, this is where I always, take the time to thank all the agents and agencies tuning us in each and every night here on Spaced Out Radio. And remember, you know the number. I don't need to give it to you. You know the number. Give us a call sometime, because we'd really, really love to say hello to you.
Right.
We would. Katie
Right.
Paige, 30 seconds. Tell everybody where they can find your research.
Yeah, you can go to katiepage.net, or you can go to RockyMountainRanchResearch.org. And please, please go to Rocky Mountain Ranch Research with Katie Paige on YouTube and give me a thumbs up and a follow and all that good stuff. I haven't gotten anything out there in the last month or so. I need to do that. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. I want to do a follow-up for season 3 on Beyond Skinwalker, because there's so much stuff that they don't put in the episodes, and it always blows my mind. Like, you guys need to hear all the other stuff that doesn't make the 44-minute episode.
Katie Paige, everybody. Swamp Dweller is coming up, along with Robin Haynes of the Cryptid Q&A. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, Katie, thank you so much for your great time. I love it when you're on.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and let me know if you get that phone call. I might have said too much.
You know, it's funny. I had someone text me recently saying, "Hey, anybody call you or talk to you about the show we did?" I'm like, "No, should they have?" He goes, "Just checking."
Yeah.
So
Just
it's
checking.
out there.
They count on us seeming like crazy people. They're not going to believe them anyway, so we don't need to worry about them. They're just a bunch of
Exactly.
crazies. Whatever.
Much
Have
love,
a
my
good night,
friend.
everybody. Thanks for
You
having
take
me.
care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Katie Paige, everybody. We love her around here. We do. Robin Haynes coming up next. I'll be right back. Hi, Runa. How are you? right. Let's bring in Robin. Hi, Robin.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing good. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here as well. So good to chat with you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Have you guys been back out to your area?
We'll get into that. We did not. I'll tell you why on the air. Hmm. 30 seconds ago, thank you to T-Bone, Stacy, and Necessary Dialogue for the great super chats tonight. Very much appreciate the love and support. If you guys have any questions during the Q&A for Robin, do me a favor. Put your questions in capital letters. I will get them to her. And we're going to have some fun as we always do with Robin. Don't forget our store is always open at spacedoutradio.com. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. Here we go. Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. We have Swamp Dweller and Robin Haynes coming in for the Cryptid Q&A momentarily. But first, we want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America. Thank you for letting us be a part of your night. And you can also tune us in on any major podcast network if you want to hear the podcast. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Yeeling. Yeeling is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. My name is John, and I'm a war veteran. I was a combat medic in the U.S. Army for 12 years. This story I have is from the supernatural realm in ancient Mesopotamia. The year was 2006, and I was on my very first deployment to Iraq as a Green soldier. At this time, the war was raging at its height, and Baghdad had become the most dangerous place on Earth. President Bush had ordered a surge of 30,000 troops into the city to curb the insurgency that had grown. I was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 26th Infantry Regiment of the U.S. 1st Infantry Division, and I was going to be one of those 30,000. Lucky me. I can go on and on about the combat side of things and being a medic, but this story has nothing to do with that other than the setting. During the deployment, my company's primary duties were to keep the peace and play sheriff to a lawless land. One of the things we did a lot was search and seizure of weapons, caches, and stockpiles. We had gotten word from a local farmer that had turned into a cache location on the outskirts of the city between western Baghdad and eastern Fallujah. We called this place the Badlands, and it earned its name. An ancient place full of scrub and old farms, rural living in the third world at its finest. A perfect area to hide whatever you wanted for the right price. The insurgents would pay off or threaten the locals to do their bidding, and not all of the locals would play ball. Our platoon got the tasking to go out and find it and blow it up with some EOD guys from the Navy that were helping out. Basically, we were going to be their bodyguards in a sense. As we prepped and loaded up for the patrol, I talked to my friend Swenson, who would later in the tour be seriously wounded. If this was going to be another goose hunt, he chuckled and said, "Probably, Doc, probably." We made it to the Badlands for a 35-minute drive into nothingness that makes up the rural areas just outside of the city. The darkness out there is unlike anything else. The stars are amazing as we made contact with the local Iraqi army that would guide us on to the objective. I cracked a smoke. The place was littered with broken skulls and broken walls and foundations of what used to be people in their dwellings. It looked unlike any place we had ever been in the area before. It looked ancient, like the stones used were just different from the rest of the farmhouses we had seen, blown up and scattered from the invasion back in 2003. As we were looking around, it must have been 11 p.m. or just after. It was dark as Hades itself. Lots of milling around and wasting time looking for something that would end up not being there. Apparently the local just wanted some cash and made a report thinking we would pay him. As our lieutenant put out the rally up call over the radio net, I stood up from the broken wall I was leaning on and looked over at Swenson. Right when we made eye contact came out the loudest screech I had ever heard in my life. It literally shook me to my core. I dropped my smoke and clutched my rifle like a child holding a teddy bear. The entire patrol heard it. The radio blew up with squad leaders doing comm checks and asking for situation reports. Everyone was shaken. I looked at Swenson, and he was in full combat mode. Adrenaline was pumping, and we had nothing to fight. I had never been that scared in my life. It was something deep in my soul that told me we were not supposed to be there. The lieutenant came over to the radio again and ordered everyone to mount up in the Humvees and return to base. We did not think twice about it. On the 35-minute ride back, these guys were asking each other over the intercom about the screech and scream. It was nuts. How could a noise shake up so many men armed to the teeth who had all been in a real fight? I asked myself this to this very day. I don't think I will ever have an answer for this. The land I stood on was the same land that Alexander the Great once fought on. Who knows how many souls and how much blood had been spilled in the centuries past? I hope I never find out. Thanks for reading my story.
Thank you, Swamp Dweller, for another crazy story. If you want more just like that, head on over to YouTube, type in Swamp Dweller, hit subscribe, ring that bell, and you get thousands of stories just like that for free. Let's go to Robin. Robin Haynes, it's always good to have you here on Spaced Out Radio. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am great. And I want to say a big thank you so much for helping out Tim and I on our project that we're working on with Flight 21 and the scariness and high strangeness that is there. I mean, you've really been a balance for us, and when we come out of the forest and have questions for what is going on, and you're right there to pick up the phone.
Always. No, it's an honor. You guys are amazing. You're getting great interaction out there, and there's so much that's going on. So I'm just blessed that you let me be a part of it.
Oh, my goodness. You've done more than you know. You've done really more than you know. And people could check out, so far we got 5 videos out from our adventures into the Flight 21 plane crash site. Today is the 60th anniversary of that crash.
Oh, wow.
I wanted to go out there so bad today, but I just thought, no, it's probably not a good idea with the energy out there right now.
Yeah, and I would imagine the spirits are pretty worked up today.
For sure. We didn't go out this past weekend. We took a weekend off, and we were ready. You know, I was sitting at my daytime job on Saturday, all prepping to go, all excited, and I got a text message from Tim basically saying he wasn't going. He was not going at all. And what he told me was something very, very interesting. And I want to read this to you here. He said, "Hey, dude, I am not going out to Flight 21 tonight. I have a gut feeling that we, or I, am not supposed to be there tonight. I keep hearing friendly warning that tonight is not good. I had a dream last night that we were driving in on the trail and there was a transparent wall right in the trail that we couldn't pass. I'm going to trust my gut on this one. Obviously, you do you, but I can't shake this feeling. I said, awesome. Follow the gut feeling, then
Yeah.
we don't go. Want to go to the other spot? He goes, no, I'm going to sit this one out and ground and refresh. I thought it was great. I really did think it was great. Like when Tim was in studio last night for the show, before the show started, he said, you know, I went up to him and I said, what you did was absolutely correct.
Yep.
That if you got that feeling that we should not go that night, we have to listen to that. I said, I've had that happen before where you don't listen to that little voice that tries to warn you and bad stuff happens.
Every time.
Have you ever had that happen before?
Absolutely. First off, you know, I commend him because he did 100% the exact right thing. Okay. But what he's getting is a form of mind speak. Mind speak is not just words in your head. It's a thought, a feeling, an emotion, a sense of knowing. And all of those things, it can come in multiple different ways. Something out there was making sure he knew not to go. And you always follow your gut, always, because your body reads the energies and the frequencies. And there's a disconnect between the time that your body reads it and it goes to your brain. Your body reads it and it goes into your consciousness before it ever goes into that brain. So there's a little bit of lag time and disconnect. So when you get those moments like that, it is imperative that you listen to them. Every time I've ever not listened to my gut instinct or a feeling that I got, even though I know it's a part of mind speak, it has gone horribly, horribly wrong. Listen to it every single time. It will help keep you safe, and you are supposed to get the information. But that is a form of mind speak. He did 100% the right thing.
What do you think would have happened if we went out there, if we had ignored that warning?
Well, I think there would have been a lot of entities out there that probably would not have wanted you there. You know, they could have put like an energy wall to stop you from going. I don't necessarily know that they would, but it could have been a problem. It could have absolutely been a problem. We are in the middle of some very strong energy hitting our planet right now, which really gets everything riled up. And him getting that mind speak the way he did, and then the dream about it, it would have been a disaster. I mean, somebody could have seriously gotten hurt. You could have gone out there, and whether it's the entities, the spirits, you know, I'm not getting it was a Sasquatch, but I think there's a lot of other entities out there. And I think the spirits were very active and not too happy. And I think that it could have been a total disaster. Somebody could have gotten hurt. At the very least, you guys could have gotten scared half to death and possibly, you know, made a problem for you to go back out at a later date. So I think he was right on the money with it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that wholeheartedly regarding not going. I think you have to think safety first when you go into areas like this.
Yep.
And I think it was great. I have zero problem with it whatsoever, and I'm glad that he made that call. I really am.
Well, I love the fact that you were so supportive in it, because sometimes, you know, people will be like, oh, you're fine, let's just go. And their curiosity and their wanting to go overrides common sense. So I commend both of you. I mean, I think that was a great decision. And now it leaves it open for you to go back at a later time without any difficulties. So that was, you know, kudos to both of you guys all the way around.
How does that mature now for this coming weekend when we are planning on going?
Well, I think that things are starting to calm down over there, but I think it leaves it open for you to go and be okay. You know, when you go into a situation that's negative, all you're doing is creating more negative problems. You know, you want to have a positive experience, not a negative. A positive experience means you'll be able to come back at a later date. without any complications. Doesn't mean it's always going to be the right time, but on the days that it's good, you have no complications. Going out there, when you get that kind of mind speak or feeling or premonition or whatever you want to call it, and you go out there at the wrong time, you're only promoting a negative experience. And once you get those negative experiences, they're not going away. It could have damaged any chances for you guys to go out there in that particular area and continue your research. So always follow your gut, always. It may not always be convenient, but it is necessary because your body reads the energy and the frequency. You have to listen to it.
I agree. Let's get to some audience questions here because we love being able to bring the audience in. We're going to kick things off with Mike tonight.
Okay.
Robin, why do some Bigfoot braid horses' hair? And in other cases, they are known for hunting them or eating them for food.
Well, let me start with the first thing on the braids. Number one, they think they're beautiful. Two, I've actually seen them take two braids and make them into one, almost like a handle. And we had a Shetland pony, and the kids would get on the Shetland pony, and they would use that loop of braid that they created as a handle to sit on the horse's back and hang on to it. The other thing, Harriet McFeely, who has the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference, has a museum. And she has just hundreds of braids that the Sasquatch have done on horses' manes, on flags, on all kinds of things. And so I asked them one time, what does that stand for? And what I was told was that it stands for the coming together of the people. One strand is for them, one strand is for us, and the middle strand is God. And so they call it the coming together of the people. And, a lot of them will do it just because they think they look nice. I've had them take vines and braid them into my pony's, I don't have the pony anymore, but at the time, into his mane. They would find cloth wherever they would, whether it was in the woods or they ripped it off of something, and they would braid that into it. There's a lot of Sasquatch, the females and even the males at times will braid their own hair and put something in it, So it's to me, what I've gotten from them is it's a very sacred thing. It's not just what they consider to be beautiful or something to hang on to, but I think there's a sacred aspect to it. They're very spiritual. Okay, they're not religious in the aspect of a formed religion. They are spiritual. And they were very clear with every one of them that I asked that said those three strands stood for their people, our people, and God. And it was the coming together of the people.
All right, let's move on to another question here. Let's go to Jay here, who is asking, do you know of any cases of stairs in the woods?
I have not personally seen any, but yes, I have talked to several people that have seen the stairs in the woods. And just for safety's sake, people stay away from the stairs. Now, a lot of times there's a house that's burned down and the stairs are perfectly fine. Absolutely fine. If you get around any of the stairs in the woods, you're going to feel a certain energy because, as we know, energy and frequency is everything. And more than likely, it will do one of two things. It'll be negative, or it will be something that will try to entice you up there. No matter what feeling you get off of that specific energy, you need to be aware that that's going to take you into some kind of a portal that you don't need to be in. Our bodies, regardless of how high our frequency is, our bodies are 3D. They cannot handle the high frequency that are within these portals. Okay, I've been taken in one before. It was very brief. I didn't even know I was going to do it until after it happened. I know of other people that have gotten pulled in them and they were okay. But the problem is portals are high frequency and it attaches to our body just like a radiation would. Our third dimensional bodies are not meant to be in portals. So, yeah, stay away from the stairs. Like I said, more often than not, it's a case of there might have been a house there that burnt down and there's absolutely no problem with them. But there are a lot of people that very bad things happen to them, whether they disappear, whether they go into a portal. And it's just, nothing is worth that risk. It isn't. There's no reason to jeopardize your safety. And if it is a portal and you end up going into it, again, that higher frequency that it takes for that portal to be created and used will hit your body just like a radiation. because our third dimensional bodies are not able to deal with it.
Well, stay away from them portals.
Yeah,
Stay away. I will never, ever go up a set of stairs if I see them
never.
in the woods. That's just wrong. Let's go back to
Nope.
Mike. Robin, if Bigfoot does have human DNA, how many times hair samples are not... I don't know what the rest of this says.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I'm not understanding it either.
Let's just say if they have human DNA, how many times have hair samples come back positive and negative?
Well, the thing that people need to realize is when we did the genome project, they would come back with human on the mitochondrial side, and then nobody would believe it. They ended up testing samples from, the people that had contact with it in the lab to make sure it did not match their human DNA. There's a washing process. I'm not familiar with it. So if you ask them, I'm not going to be able to help you with that. Not a scientist. Dr. Ketchum gets to do that. And they will wash it to make sure that there is no contamination. And a lot of the hair samples, not within our project, but with other projects, they completely discard and act like there's nothing there. And it's really because there's human in it, and they think it's either been contaminated or it came from a human. And the hairs are very different. So,
what does Sasquatch hair feel like?
Those samples that I turned in that did come back positive, it was a little more coarse than our human hair. A lot of it was wavy. And you need to know that when you test, if I get this right, when you test hair off a Sasquatch, it's not fur, it's hair, you need the roots because that's where the DNA is at. So, hair that might have broken off or whatever really is not going to be helpful for what you want to do. You want the roots with them. And so it is thicker. It's not as coarse as a horse's hair or mane, but it is a little bit more coarse than ours. It's not as fine. Now, I have had some that we did get from some of the kids that was a little bit finer and still, came back positive. But for the most part, it is a little bit thicker than ours. And generally, there's a wave to it. I've only seen like one female. She brought her baby to see me, and her hair was 100% straight. She looked like Cousin It. She really did, except when she walked, the hair just fell off the muscles because the muscle mass was just extreme, and it would part the hairs.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. All right. Let's go to the next question here as we got about a minute here. We'll make it a fast one. If we got to carry it over, we will. Robin, Joe says, you once told him that there was a portal on the east side of his property. Do portals ever go away?
There's more than one kind of portal. There's some that are anchored, which means that they are attached there. They're not going anywhere. And then there's some that the cryptids as well as the ETs can just open up wherever they want. They can also open what they call a rift. So in Joe's case, that particular portal is anchored. It doesn't seem to be working at this moment in time, but I think what they're doing is they're opening and closing it. So, one day it might be open and the next day it might be closed. But that one has always appeared to me to be anchored. So it's not going to go anywhere.
How do we know if we got portals? 20-second answer.
It's all feeling that energy and frequency. And once your frequency is high enough where your vision is altered a little bit, you can actually see the energy wave in it. That's pretty much the only way, our people see it.
All right, Robin, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We're going to return with the Q&A with Robin Haynes, our intrepid cryptid researcher, experiencer, communicator, all that kind of good stuff. We love Robin around here. This is Spaced Out Radio.
This is Spaced Out Radio, and your host, Dave Scott.
All right, we're clear.
I really, like I said, I commend you guys for not going. But one thing I do want to point out is, the more you guys are doing all this stuff, the higher frequency goes, which means abilities are coming out. You're starting to get the mind speak. You're starting to get premonitions. You're starting to feel everything. Like, that's fantastic. That is really, really great.
We both have the feeling that something big is coming.
I agree.
I don't know what it is. Don't know. There is a mystery to that. It's easy to sit there and say that. I don't know what it is. I don't want to know until it happens. But I am curious because I've had that feeling before and things have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had that feeling before and nothing has happened.
Yeah, I think eventually what will happen is you're going to get a lot more contact, and it's not going to just be from the Sasquatch. So you guys both need to start wrapping your head around the fact that, you're going to get Sasquatch contact, Dogman contact, ET contact, and definitely 100% spirit contact.
I had a spirit on the ghost when I was doing the Estus method with Tim, and I had Tim under the Estus method. I had a ghost that night. I was asking a question. I forget what the question was, but the answer was something along the lines of, "We're firefighters, dummy."
I had one the other night. I was on the phone with somebody, and right in the middle of the call, the phone got all staticky, and I heard a woman's voice, and she said, "I'm right here. I'm right here. Talk to me. I'm right here." And I said, "Who are you?" And then it got all staticky and she was gone. But she kept saying, "I'm right here. I'm right here." And it didn't sound like another regular human that had, got the lines crossed or anything, because the whole thing went staticky. And the person I was talking to never heard a thing. The only one that heard it was me.
Mm-hmm. Great question, T-Bone. I will get to that. Yep. This will be times 6 when we go up, because the phenomena told me 6 times before we could start doing what we want. I'm very curious what happens on time number 6. Hi, AJ.
Let me know when you go for time number 6 so I can make sure to have my phone next to me, which I usually do. And because you guys usually go on a Saturday, I try to keep the phone right next to me.
What was I going to say to you? I had a thought about the gifting site, because you know how we moved the gifting site.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the 3rd gifting site in that area. Because the original one I set up in 2020, but then there was a family that went touring the area, and I remember we were sitting in the by the vehicle, and I heard these kids, "Oh, what are these toys doing here?" way off in the distance, right? And I was like, "No, don't play with those. Don't play with those." I'm wondering though, because here's the interesting part. I don't know if you've seen the video from the last time, but Tim's wife lost her ID when we were up there, and we don't know how it fell out of her pocket, but it did. And her jacket had those overlapping flaps to block things from falling, yet her ID that contained her hunting license and her driver's license fell out.
Oh, no.
Okay. Here's the funny part about it. We found it by the original gifting site.
I was going to say, I'm not getting that it fell out on its own.
Well, it was found face up about 10 feet from the original gifting site.
Either that or if it fell out, they found it and brought it back for you guys.
Well, and that's what I'm asking. Do you think we should, because we're trying to establish that secondary gifting site from where the coins were, do you think we should move it back to the tree?
Yes. Yeah, they are not happy with it over there at all. Now, that original gifting site, was that where you had the little blue car? Remember the little blue car? Oh my gosh, they went nuts over that little blue car.
Yes.
that was like a really big deal to them. Did they
Okay,
ever get it, or did you have it?
We'll move it back this weekend. Thank you to Mayhem, T-Bone, Stacy, and Necessary Dialogue for the super chats tonight. Greatly appreciate your love and support. And we're going to go in right now in about 7 seconds. Here comes the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you for tuning us in as Robin Haynes is here with the Cryptid Q&A, and we got some great questions coming up for here momentarily. But first, we want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here we go. Robin Haynes and the Cryptid Q&A continues right now. Robin, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I just enjoy it. You guys get great questions, and you really have like the best viewers. You really do.
We got a great audience. We really do. Speaking of a great one, let's talk about T-Bone here for a second.
Okay.
He's asking, do Sasquatch swing their arms while running?
You know, most of the ones I've seen actually do. I've only seen one that pulled their arms up closer to their body. But, you know, when they do, yeah, some of them do. Okay, try to remember that these guys are all as diverse and as individual as we are. So, you know, they're going to do things differently. They're not all, there's no cookie cutter thing that they're all going to do. But they do tend to swing their arms a lot. Now, I have noticed that a lot of them that run, they don't leave them out as elongated, perhaps, as they do when they're walking. But again, some of them will. They're all individuals. But that's a good question.
Sense. That makes sense. All right, let's move to another question. Let's go to Jose. Well, that was for Katie, but we'll ask this one to you, Robin. Do you believe that many cryptids like the Rake and Dogman might be the results of secret past alien DNA experiments?
Absolutely. 100%. Definitely the Rake. The Dogman, there's several different kinds of Dogmen. There are some that were born of this earth. There are some that were government created. And there are absolutely some that are ET created. And I personally believe more than one race of ET. Like the Ebens, they created some on planet Serpa. But we also have other races that are very good at genetic manipulation, and they have as well. But there are some that were actually from our planet. And you see a lot of those that come, you know, like maybe in Egypt. But again, they go through portals. They can be anywhere at that point. But yeah, definitely. And my opinion of the Rake, I mean, we don't have DNA to check it. This is strictly an opinion. I've had one encounter with that thing, and it was not good. And there was actually more than one of them. And from what I saw, I tend to believe that it's more of an ET than I do either ET created or an actual ET. But you don't want to mess with them.
All right, moving on. Let's go back to Jose here for a second. How many rakes or low crawlers do you estimate there could be in the U.S.?
I don't think there's any way to guess that. I would probably say in the U.S., you know, I don't think the amount that we have of the Sasquatch and the Dogmen, but I would say hundreds to into the 1,000 easily. There's really no way to document it. They stay pretty much hidden, so we don't get to see as much as we want. But I think we would really be remiss if we thought that there was, you know, not even 1,000 of them. It always amazes me with the Sasquatch, and people will be like, oh yeah, there's 3,000 in the United States. And I'm like, there's 3,000, you know, in a couple of cities. I mean, there's so many more than what people think. It's just astronomical. And I don't think that there is as many rakes as there are the Sasquatch and the dogmen and the cat people. But I do believe there is a lot more than people realize.
Here's one thing I want to ask about that. Do you think the reason why we can't get a number on them is because I'm a firm believer that creatures like the rake, Hat Man, what's another one? Siren Head, and many of these creatures are actually, creepy pasta stories that have come to life through tulpas. And
it's possible.
do you think then, and to me, that would be extremely difficult to put a number on if people can create them off the energy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's absolutely no way, even with the Sasquatch, because they stay so well hidden. And a lot of these things will go underground or they stay in cave systems where they're not seen. So there is absolutely 100% no way to get an accurate count. Like a couple of clans that I work with, I've got one that has 28 in it. I have another clan that I work with that there's 13 in it. And then when I was in Michigan, the last clan that I worked with there, I kept a journal of every different one that came through there. And at one point in time, 60 came through. Now, whether or not that was a couple of clans, I do know we have, like where I'm at now, I've got 3 different clans that wander in and out. The ones in the last place I was at in Michigan that the 60 went through there could have been more than one clan, but I don't think so, because we did a smudge ceremony there for them one time. A friend of mine did it, and we had 2 or 3 extra clans come in for that ceremony, and they were not part of the 60. So I just think there's absolutely no way. And it's always amazing to me when we get these people that try to make, everybody believe that, there's, 2,000 or 3,000 in the entire US. There's absolutely no way. I will never believe that. I've seen too many of them. And while there is no way to count it, so I couldn't prove it, when you have that many in a very small area, think about the size of the United States. And then they get up in the mountains and they get in the tunnels and they get in the cave systems. There is absolutely no way I will ever believe that. They produce very easily, and they are very maternal, and they're so spread out, and they get in areas that we can't even get to. So there's no way that we can adequately, do it. So, but I personally don't believe that there's that few of them. I've seen too many.
All right, Robin, let's get to the next question here that we got coming up. This one from Blue Cruise. Does the salinity level in a body of water, lake, river, etc., affect the attractiveness for cryptids needing access to the water for nutritional, travel navigation, or other needs?
Do you know what? That's a really good question. And I can't prove this. This is just an opinion, but I would say yes. Because the fresher the water is, the more they're going to be attracted to it, because there's going to be more fish in that water. There's going to be more plant life and vegetation that they can eat. The other thing is, and people don't think about this, again, everything is frequency and energy. You can pull energy and frequency from the earth. You can pull it from the atmosphere, but you can also pull it from water. Water has energy in it. These are energy beings, and they will stay wherever the frequencies are at. That's what draws it to them. That's why people that will go out, you don't have to go running around in the woods to find them. Have a bonfire, be happy, laugh, sing, and it will draw them in like flies if they're in that area, because when you're laughing and you're singing and you're having a good time, your frequency is up. And it's the same thing with the water. And the salinity, I would believe, would have a lot to do with it. Because whatever they can drink, and they're going to know what's better for them. It's like the salt water. I don't think that, not that they don't go by the salt water, because they do. People have seen them swimming in it, and they're pulling fish out of it. But that, the water that is more of a fresh water, they're more drawn to because they can drink it. They aren't just pulling fish out of it, they can drink it. So I would think the salinity would have an awful lot to do with it. Absolutely.
Around our Sasquatch area, there's a lot of swamps. Swamps usually are dirty water.
Yeah.
But that doesn't seem to stop them in that area.
No.
I guess their bodies have probably adapted to whatever is in that water, I would assume.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too the big attraction with the swamps is, number one, your swampy states seem to be the ones that are hotter. Not that we don't have swamps like in Michigan and places like that, but a lot of your hot weathered states have the swamps. So they get in the water to get rid of the bugs. They get in the water because we aren't there. We generally don't go in the swamps. Now there's a swamp right up the road from my house right now, and they go back there all the time. You know, and there's water moccasins in there and rattlers and everything else in there. And, you know, I mean, I've not seen an alligator in there. I've seen one not far from that at one of the ponds that are up the road from it. But there could, you know, be gators in there as well. And our people aren't going to go in it, which is all the more reason for them to. But it will cool them up.
All right. Bunch of questions, 10 minutes to go. Let's go to Paramarv here. I've been hearing about large mantids lately, 10 to 20 feet, etc. Have you encountered anything like these? If so, can you give us any info on what they want, need, friend or foe?
I have had a few of them that have shown up. The first one that showed up, I didn't have a problem with. It basically just watched me and then it was gone. I did have one that had very negative energy out of it and was not friendly, to say the very least. So, but I do know of people that have had contact with them and they claim that they're fine. But I think it's important to realize that with everything, I don't care what it is, there's good and bad in all of them. And I think they study us. I think they want our planet more than they want us. But we seem to be quite a novelty for a lot of the aliens because we just don't do things the way they're supposed to be done. You know, they all work through the consciousness. Our people are still trying to catch up to start working through the consciousness. And quite honestly, we screw up a lot of things. But I think the mantids would be, because they're part of the insectoid group, that they would be, I believe anyway, that they would be more inclined to be more interested in the planet than us. But they definitely, I've talked to a few people that have had negative experiences with them, but I've also talked to people that thought they were great. And the two occasions I saw them, the first time there was 3 of them, and they did not harm me in any way, shape, or form. The second time there was only one, and he was a royal pain in the butt. And he was not friendly.
Moving on, let's go to Jose. Do portals mainly exist in the 4th dimension upwards, or do they start in our 3D reality?
They do go up in the higher dimensions because they need the high frequency in order to work. However, a lot of them are sitting in our 3D reality. But when they are created, it's generally a high frequency being that creates them. And that's why they're able to. They can exist as long as the frequency is put into them. Now, some of them shut down strictly because they're not being used and the high frequency beings aren't messing with them and doing anything and they're not keeping them active. And then they just go dormant. But they are in a higher dimension to be able to use them. But they do have them on this 3D reality. And they're made by the higher frequency beings.
All right, let's go to Joe. Robin, Joe may ask this question, but there's been a few people questioning. We did the Estus method on Tim out at Flight 21.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Tim had his pointy stick sitting on his lap. That was a decision we made for safety in case something happened where Tim could rip the blindfold off. And since there's only 2 of us, I'm preoccupied with filming and watching around. Tim is blindfolded with the Estus method. There's a lot of people who are saying we probably shouldn't have done that, but we did it anyways. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, to begin with, I'm not familiar with the Estus method, so I'll be very honest with you guys. I'm not. What I will say is when we go in there and we start doing all these methods, because we're trying different things, we don't know the thought process on their side. And it can get dangerous because we don't know what we're saying to them, we don't know what we're doing with them. We don't know how their perception of it is. And that's where it can get kind of tricky. So a lot of these different methods that are tried can be dangerous. Radionics boxes are phenomenal. They're high frequency, they're high energy. You can use them for protection. You can use them. They used to call them the wishing machine. And I know someone that is brilliant, and he knows how to make these. And there was talk at one time about taking them out in the woods to see if it would draw into cryptids, because they're drawn to the high frequency. And, we talked about it, and fortunately he listened. And I told him, I said, we don't know how they're going to perceive that. And when you bring that high of a frequency into something, they don't look at it that, oh, that's cool. They look at it that this is now a threat. It's a high enough frequency that could do damage to my clan, to my pack, or, whatever you're dealing with. So we have to look at it from the fact that it might be easier for us and it might be a really cool thing. But when it brings things in, is it necessarily a good thing? Are they coming in out of curiosity? Are they coming in to do battle because they don't understand what's going on from our end and they consider it a threat?
No, I wholeheartedly get that. I do. But, that's why we've been clear with the phenomena, with everything that we're doing regarding protecting ourselves in an environment where animals could come out at any time and they're not very friendly towards humans. All right, let's get to another question here. Let's go to T-Bone. Robin, earlier in the show, Katie Paige was mentioning that there was this cryptid creature that almost looked like a platypus in Colorado. Have you ever heard of these? Do you know what they are?
Yes. I would believe, and again, my opinion, guys, I don't have DNA to ask Dr. Ketchum to test, but in my opinion, these are ET created. We are finding so many of these cryptids, basically you're sliced and diced. These are all genetically modified. And I believe that that's probably as well. But yes, I have heard of them.
All right. What are they?
I think they're genetically modified, which would come from the ETs, either the government or the ETs. And in my opinion, I would believe the ETs. I mean, I saw one time, it looked like it had the head of a possum and a body of a human. And it had a tail like a possum. And it was like 7 foot tall. It was insane. These are all genetically modified using human DNA and whatever animal they're using.
Let's go to Blue here. Can humans have nighttime reflective eye shine similar to cryptids as a recessive gene, possibly inserted into our genetics by aliens, ETs, in the distant past?
I would never say no, because I'm not a scientist, but normally no. No, they have like Sasquatch, they're not reflective eyes. They are not like a deer. Their eyes are completely different. They don't do the reflective shine. They can actually make their eyes glow. Dogmans are the same way. There's been multiple instances where not only have I seen it, but thousands of other people have seen it, where their eyes glow and it looks like headlights. So they're not reflective like you would see with a deer. But I'm just re-looking at this question to make sure I answer all of it. But could we have it? That would be something that an ET could possibly do. And I'm not sure that they would for us. But it's not impossible either. They can genetically modify anybody, anytime, anywhere.
All right, let's move on. I think we got time for one or two more. Let's go next to Jose here. This may sound crazy, but do Bigfoots experience differences in their races like we do here as humans?
Actually, they do. When you see all these different kinds, some will have a very pale skin, some will have a dark skin, some will have a gray skin. They, depending on where they were born and raised in, and of course, because they portal, they can end up anywhere. But they actually do. Like, they have the complete different skin colors. The heads are shaped exactly like our human men. Others have the conio head. It's a cultural thing, just like it is for Asian, Black, Indian, whatever. It's really a cultural difference. And yes, they absolutely do. Great
All right,
question.
let's go to Blue Cruise here. Were the Sasquatch, dogmen, and other cryptids intentionally and strategically scattered across the earth by aliens or ETs?
That we have no way of knowing. I do know government-wise, they do plant some cryptids that they create, or some of the dogmen that they use in certain areas. But as far as the ETs doing that, I would absolutely say yes to that. Can't prove it, but do I believe that they do? Yeah, I actually do. And then once they get on the planet, they spread themselves all over the place.
Let's sneak in one more. Jose is asking, is mind speak another term for ESP?
Some of it is, yes, not completely. Mind speak, the word itself is so misleading. Like I said, it can be, words that you hear, a feeling, any picture that shows up in your head, a music that's playing that would give you information, just a sense of knowing and you don't know why. It can come in all forms.
Robin, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Spaced Out Radio, the Cryptid Q&A happens weekly with Robin Haynes, and we love her around here. We do. Robin, you are absolutely the best.
Well, thank you. I love you guys, too. It's always a pleasure.
Give everybody your contact information, if you don't mind.
Sure.
20 seconds.
You can find me on Facebook under Robin Haynes, Haynes, no middle initial. If you want to book a session with me, you can go on my website, www.paranormal-empowerment.com, or, again, get hold of me on Facebook.
Robin Haynes, everybody. She will be back with us next week, and we love it when she is here as we say goodnight to Robin. And hello to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAB, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on X, and hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us. Because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. All right, Robin, what a great show. Thank you very much, my dear. Hold on, I got you on mute. Hold on. There you are. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. If you have any problems, give me a call.
Probably call you Saturday, okay?
I will be around.
All right, much
Take
love,
care.
my dear.
Love ya. Bye.
Love you too. Bye-bye. All right, everybody, big thank you tonight to Necessary Dialogue, Stacy, T-Bone, and Mayhem for the super chats. Going to get going here tonight. I got a few things I need to take care of before heading off to bed, so I got to rush through the edit. Appreciate you. Science Bob tomorrow night on the show. We're going to have a great time with him. You guys have a good one. Go get some sleep. Good night, everybody.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.